Okay, are we back? Yeah, that worked pretty good. Boop. Okie dokie, how's everybody doing? Hey, Connor. Um, supposed to say if you guys want to actually sit in chat with me, you can do so, but we're not exactly. Oh, son of a bitch. Oh well. Enjoy it while you can. Alright, so Witcher books are out of order. Um, we're starting where Ciri is already at Kaer being trained by Geralt and the other Witchers. Alright, so also Triss is at Kaer and is helping the Witchers with Ciri. Your fears were unfounded, entirely ungrounded, Triss grimaced, resting her elbows on the table. The time when wizards used to hunt sources and magically gifted children, tearing them from their parents or guardians by force or deceit, is long gone. Did you really think I might want to take Ciri away from you? Lambert snorted and turned his face away. Eskel and Vesemir looked at Geralt, and Geralt said nothing. He continued to gaze off and to the side, playing incessantly with his silver witcher medallion, depicting the head of a snarling wolf. Triss knew the medallion reacted to magic. On such a night as Miniverne, when the air itself was vibrating with magic, the witcher's medallions must be practically humming. It must be both irritating and bothersome. No, child, Vesemir finally said. We know you would not do such a thing, but we also know that you do, ultimately, have to tell the chapter about her. We've known for a long time that every wizard, male or female, is burdened with this duty. You don't take talented children from their parents and guardians anymore. You observe such children so that later, at the right moment, you can fascinate them in magic, influence them. Have no fear, she interrupted coldly. I will not tell anyone about Ciri. Not even the chapter. Why are you looking at me like that? We're amazed by the ease in which you pledge to keep this secret, said Eskel calmly. Forgive me, Triss. I do not mean to offend you, but what has happened to your legendary loyalty to the Council and Chapter? A lot has happened. The war changed many things, and the battle for Sodden Hill changed even more. I won't bore you with the politics, especially as certain issues and affairs are bound by secrets I am not allowed to divulge. But as for loyalty, I am loyal, and believe me, in this matter I can be loyal to both you and to the chapter. Such double loyalty. Geralt looked at her in the eyes for the first time that evening, is devilishly difficult to manage. Rarely does it succeed, Triss. The enchantress turned her gaze on Ciri. The girl was sitting on a bearskin with Cohen, tucked away in the far corner of the hall, and both were busy playing a hand-slapping game. The game was growing monotonous, as both were incredibly quick. Neither could manage to slap the other's hand in any way. This, however, clearly neither mattered to them, nor spoiled their game. Geralt, she said, when you found Ciri on the Yaruga, you took her with you. You brought her to Kaer. Hid her from the world, and do not let even those closest to the child know she is alive. You did this because something, about which I know nothing, convinced you that destiny exists, holds sway over us, and guides us in everything we do. I think the same, and have always done so. If destiny wants Ciri to become a magician, she will become one. Neither the chapter nor the council have to know about her. They don't have to observe or encourage her. So in keeping your secret, I won't betray the chapter in any way. But as you know, there is something of a hitch here. Were it only one, sighed Vesemir. Go on, child. The girl has magical abilities, and that can't be neglected. It's too dangerous. In what way? Uncontrolled powers are an ominous thing, for both the Source and those in their vicinity. The Source can threaten those around them in many ways, but they threaten themselves in only one: mental illness, usually catatonia. Devil take it, said Lambert after a long silence. I'm listening to you, half convinced that someone here has already lost their marbles and will, at any moment now, present a threat to the rest of us. Destiny, sources, spells, hocus pocus. Aren't you exaggerating, Marigold? Is this the first child to be brought to the keep? Geralt didn't find Destiny. He found another homeless, orphan child. We'll teach the girl the sword and let her out into the world like the others. True, I admit we've never trained a girl in Kaer Morhen before. We've had some problems with Ciri, made mistakes, and it's a good thing you've pointed them out to us. But don't let us exaggerate. She is not so remarkable as to make us fall to our knees and raise our eyes to the heavens. Is there a lack of female warriors roaming the world? I assure you, Marigold, Ciri will leave here skillful and healthy, strong and able to face life, and, I warrant, without catatonia or any other epilepsy, unless you delude her into believing she has some such disease. Vesemir, Triss turned in her chair. Tell him to keep quiet. He's getting in the way. You think you know it all, said Lambert calmly, but you don't. Not yet. Look. He stretched his hand toward the hearth, arranging his fingers together in a strange way. The chimney roared and howled. The flames burst out violently. The glowing embers grew brighter and rained sparks. Geralt, Vesemir, and Eskel glanced at Ciri anxiously, but the girl paid no attention to the spectacular fireworks. Triss folded her arms and looked at Lambert defiantly. The sign of Ard? She stated calmly. Did you think to impress me? With the use of the same sign, strengthened through concentration, willpower, and a spell, I can blow the logs from the chimney in a moment and blast them so high you'll think they are stars. You can, he agreed, but Ciri can't. She can't form the sign of Ard, or any other sign. She has tried hundreds of times, to no effect. And you know our signs require minimal power. Ciri does not even have that. She is an absolutely normal child. She has not the least magical power. She has, in fact, a comprehensive lack of ability. And here you are telling us she's a source, trying to threaten us. A source, she exclaimed coldly, has no control over their skills, no command over them. They are a medium, something like a transmitter. Unknowingly, they get in touch with energy. Unknowingly, they convert it. And when they try to control it, when they strain, trying to form the signs perhaps, nothing comes of it. And nothing will come of it. Not just after hundreds of attempts, but after thousands. It is one characteristic of a source. Then, one day, a moment comes when the source does not exert itself, does not strain, is daydreaming or thinking about cabbage and sausages, playing dice, enjoying themselves in bed with a partner, picking their nose. And suddenly something happens. A house might go up in flames. Or something, half a town goes up. You're exaggerating, Marigold. Lambert. Geralt released his medallion and rested his hands on the table. First, stop calling Triss Marigold. She has asked you a number of times not to. Second, Triss is not exaggerating. I saw Ciri's mother, Princess Pavetta, in action with my own eyes. I tell you, it was really something. I don't know if she was a source or not, but no one suspected she had any power at all until, save by a hair's breadth, she almost reduced the royal castle of Cintra to ashes. We should assume, therefore, said Eskel, lighting the candles in yet another candlestick, that Ciri could, indeed, be genetically burdened. Not only could, said Vesemir, she is so burdened. On the one hand, Lambert is right. Ciri is not capable of forming signs. On the other, we have all seen. He fell silent and looked at Ciri, who, with a joyful squeal, acknowledged that she had the upper hand in the game. Triss spied a small smile on Cohen's face, and was sure he had allowed her to win. Precisely, she sneered. You have all seen. What have you seen? Under what circumstances did you see it? Don't you think, boys, that the time has come for more truthful confessions? Hell, I repeat, I will keep your secret. You have my word. Lambert glanced at Geralt. Geralt nodded in assent. The younger Witcher stood and took a large rectangular crystal carafe and a small phial from the high shelf. He poured the contents of the phial into the carafe, shook it several times, and poured the transparent liquid into the chalices on the table. Have a drink with us, Triss. Is the truth so terrible, she mocked, that we can't talk about it soberly? Do I have to get drunk in order to hear it? Don't be such a know-it-all. Take a sip. You will find it easier to understand. What is it? White seagull. What? A mild remedy, Eskel smiled, for pleasant dreams. Damn it. A Witcher hallucinogenic? That's why your eyes shine like that in the evenings? White seagull is very gentle. It's black seagull that is hallucinogenic. If there's magic in this liquid, I'm not allowed to take it. Exclusively natural ingredients, Geralt assured her, but he looked, she noticed, disconcerted. He was clearly afraid she would question them about the elixir's ingredients. And diluted with a great deal of water. We would not offer you anything that could harm you. The sparkling liquid, with its strange taste, struck her throat with its chill, and then dispersed warmth throughout her body. The magician ran her tongue over her gums and palate. She was unable to recognize any of the ingredients. You gave Ciri some of this seagull to drink, she surmised, and then— It was an accident, Geralt interrupted quickly. That first evening, just after we arrived. She was thirsty, and the seagull stood on the table. Before we had time to react, she had drunk it all in one go, and fell into a trance. We had such a fright, Vesemir admitted, and sighed. Oh, that we did, child, more than we could take. She started speaking with another voice, the magician stated calmly, looking at the Witcher's eyes gleaming in the candlelight. She started talking about events and matters of which she could have no knowledge. She started to prophesy, right? What did she say? That I— Rubbish, Lambert said dryly. Senseless drivel. Then I have no doubt, she looked straight at him, that you understood each other perfectly well. Drivel is your specialty, and I am further convinced of it every time you open your mouth. Do me a great favor. Don't open it for a while, all right? This once, said Eskel gravely, rubbing the scar across his cheek. Lambert is right, Triss. After drinking seagull, Ciri really was incomprehensible. The first time it was gibberish. Only after— He broke off. Triss shook her head. It was only the second time that she started talking sense, she guessed. So there was a second time, too. Also, after she drank a drug because of your carelessness. Triss. Geralt raised his hand. This is not time for your childish spitefulness. It doesn't amuse us. It worries and upsets us. Yes, there was a second time too, and a third. Siri fell, quite by accident, during an exercise. She lost consciousness. When she regained it, she had fallen into another trance, and once again she spoke nonsense. Again, it was not her voice, and again it was incomprehensible. But I have heard similar voices before, heard a similar way of speaking. It's how those poor, sick, demented women known as oracles speak. You see what I'm thinking? Clearly. That was the second time. Get to the third. Garrett wiped his brow, suddenly beaded with sweat, on his forearm. Siri often wakes up at night, he continued, shouting. She's been through a lot. She does not want to talk about it, but it is clear that she saw things no child should see in Sintra and Angren. I even fear that someone harmed her. It comes back to her in dreams. Usually she is easy to reassure and she falls asleep without any problem. But once, after waking, she was in a trance again. She again spoke with someone else's unpleasant, menacing voice. She spoke clearly and made sense. She prophesied, foresaw the future, and what she foretold. What? What, Geralt? Death, Vesemir said gently. Death, child. Triss glanced at Ciri, who was shrilly accusing Cohen of cheating. Cohen put his arms around her and burst out laughing. The magician suddenly realized that she had never, up until now, heard any of the Witchers laugh. For whom? She asked briefly, still gazing at Cohen. Him, said Vesemir. And me, Geralt added, and smiled. When she woke up, she remembers nothing, and we didn't ask her any questions. Quite so. As to the prophecy, was it specific? Detailed? No. Geralt looked her straight in the eyes, confused. Don't ask about it, Triss. We are not worried by the contents of Ciri's prophecies and ravings, but about what happens to her. We're not afraid for ourselves, but... Careful, warned Vesemir. Don't talk about it in front of her. Cohen approached the table, carrying the girl piggyback. Wish everyone good night, Ciri, he said. Say good night to those night owls. We're going to sleep. It's nearly midnight. In a minute, it'll be the end of Mid-Invern. As of tomorrow, every day brings spring closer. I'm thirsty. Ciri slipped off his back and reached for Eskel's chalice. Eskel deftly moved the vessel beyond her reach and grabbed a jug of water. Triss stood quickly. Here you are. She gave her half-full chalice to the girl while meaningfully squeezing Geralt's arm and looking Vesemir in the eye. Drink. Triss, whispered Eskel, watching Ciri drink greedily. What are you doing? It's... Not a word, please. They did not have to wait long for it to take effect. Ciri suddenly grew rigid, cried out, and smiled a broad, happy smile. She squeezed her eyelids shut and stretched out her arms. She laughed, spun a pirouette, and danced on tiptoes. Lambert moved the stool away in a flash, leaving Cohen to stand between the dancing girl and the hearth. Triss jumped up and tore an amulet from her pouch, a sapphire set in silver on a thin chain. She squeezed it tightly in her hand. Child, groaned Vesemir, what are you doing? I know what I'm doing, she said sharply. Ciri has fallen into a trance, and I'm going to contact her psychically. I am going to enter her. I told you, she is something like a magical transmitter. I've got to know what she is transmitting, how, and from where she is drawing the aura, how she is transforming it. It's mid-Ivern, a favorable night for such an undertaking. I don't like it, Geralt frowned. I don't like it at all. Should either of us suffer an epileptic fit, the magician said, ignoring his words, you know what to do. A stick between our teeth, hold us down, wait for it to pass. Chin up, boys. I've done this before. I'm gonna take a pause and let you guys know That is inaccurate information if somebody's having a seizure. Do not put anything in their mouth. You can break their teeth. If you put your finger in their mouth, all it takes is the effort to bite through a carrot to bite someone's finger off. Don't hold someone down. It is ineffective. Roll them onto their side. Let them go. Just make sure they don't kick anything. Because if they're on their back, they can choke on their spit. Usually they do not stop breathing. It's just very shallow. And if it goes on longer than, if it's the first one, call 911. If it's not the first one, after 30 seconds or so, call 911. Unless they give you specific instructions. Then follow those. Because if they're an epileptic, trust me, they know the process. Letting y'all know this, because, hi, I am an epileptic as well. Not fun. Mine I usually go unconscious for. I've had some when I'm awake. I prefer unconsciousness. I do not want to see what's going on and where I cannot control it. Not fun. At all. Back to the book. Siri ceased dancing, sank to her knees, extended her arms, and rested her head on her lap. Triss pressed the now warm amulet to her temple and murmured a formula of a spell. She closed her eyes, concentrated her willpower, and gave out a burst of magic. The sea roared, waves thundered against the rocky shore, and exploded in high geysers amidst the boulders. She flapped her wings, chasing the salty wind. Indescribably happy, she dived, caught up with a flock of her companions, brushed the crests of the waves with her claws, soared into the sky again, shedding water droplets, and glided, tossed by the gale whistling through her pin feathers. Force of suggestion, she thought soberly. It is only force of suggestion. Seagull. Triss? Triss? Siri? Where are you? Triss! The cry of the seagulls ceased. The magician still felt the wet splash of the beakers, but the sea was no longer below her. Or it was, but it was a sea of grass, an endless plateau stretching as far as the horizon. Triss, with horror, realized she was looking at the view from the top of Sodden Hill. But it was not the hill. It could not be the hill. The sky suddenly grew dark. Shadows swirled around her. She saw a long column of indistinct figures slowly climbing down the mountainside. She heard murmurs superimposed over each other, mingling into an uncanny, incomprehensible chorus. Siri was standing nearby with her back turned to her. The wind was blowing her ashen hair about. The indistinct, hazy figures continued past in a long, unending column. Passing her, they turned their heads. Triss suppressed a cry, watching the listless, peaceful faces of their dead, unseeing eyes. She did not know all of the faces, did not recognize them, but some of them she did know. Coral, Veniel, Yol, pox-marked Axel. "Why have you brought me here?" she whispered. "Why?" Siri turned. She raised her arm, and the magician saw a trickle of blood run down her lifeline, across her palm, and onto her wrist. "It is the rose," the girl said calmly. "The rose of Sharawed." I pricked myself. "It is nothing. It is only blood. The blood of elves." The sky grew even darker then, a moment later, flared with the sharp, blinding glare of lightning. Everything froze in the silence and stillness. Triss took a step, wanting to make sure she could. She stopped next to Siri and saw that both of them stood on the edge of a bottomless chasm where reddish smoke, glowing as though it was lit from behind, was swirling. The flash of another soulless or soundless bolt of lightning suddenly revealed a long marble staircase leading into the depths of the abyss. "It has to be this way," Siri said in a shaky voice. There is no other. Only this. Down the stairs. It has to be this way because... Vase. There... It... Again. Speak, whispered the magician. Speak, child. The child of elder blood. Fainenwed. Luned et ein eker. Deathwin. The white flame. No, no, no. Siri? The black knight. With feathers in his helmet. What did he do to me? What happened? I was frightened. I'm still frightened. It's not ended. It will never end. The lion cub must die. Reasons of state. No, no. Siri, no. The girl turned rigid and squeezed her eyelids shut. No, no, I don't want to. Don't touch me. Siri's face suddenly changed, hardened. Her voice became metallic, cold and hostile, resounding with threatening, cruel mockery. You have come all this way with her, Triss Marigold? All the way here? You have come too far, 14th one. I warned you. Who are you? Triss shuddered, but she kept her voice under control. You will know when the time comes. I will know now. The magician raised her arms, extended them abruptly, putting all her strength into a spell of identification. The magic curtain burst, but behind it was a second, a third, a fourth. Triss sank to her knees with a groan, but reality continued to burst. More doors opened, a long, endless road leading to nowhere, to emptiness. You are wrong, 14th one. The metallic, inhuman voice sneered. You've mistaken the stars reflected on the surface of the lake at night for the heavens. Do not touch that child. She is not a child. Siri's lips moved, but Triss saw that the girl's eyes were dead, glazed and vacant. She is not a child, the voice repeated. She is the flame, the white flame which will set light to the world. She is the elder blood, Hen Eker, the blood of elves, the seed which will not sprout but burst into flame, the blood which will be defiled. When Dered arrives, the time of end. Vas Dered ep Agen. Are you foretelling death? Shouted Triss. Is that all you can do? Foretell death? For everyone? Them? Her? Me? You? You are already dead, 14th one. Everything in you has already died. By the power of the spheres, moaned the magician, activating what little remained of her strength, and drawing her hand through the air. I throw a spell on you, by water, fire, earth, and air. I conjure you in thought, in dream, and in death, by all that was, by what is, and by what will be. I cast my spell on you. Who are you? Speak. Siri turned her head away. The vision of the staircase leading down into the depths of the abyss disappeared, dissolved, and in its place appeared a gray, leaden sea, foaming, crests of waves breaking, and the seagull's cries burst through the silence once more. Fly, said the voice through the girl's lips. It is time. Go back to where you came from, 14th of the hill. Fly on the wings of a gull and listen to the cry of other seagulls. Listen carefully. I conjure you. You cannot. Fly, seagull. Suddenly the wet, salty air was there again, roaring with the gale, and there was the flight, a flight with no beginning and no end. Seagulls cried wildly, cried and commanded. Triss? Siri? Forget about him. Don't torture him. Forget. Forget, Triss. Forget. Triss. 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 Triss! She opened her eyes, tossed her head on the pillow, and moved her numb hands. Geralt? I'm here. How are you feeling? She cast her eyes around. She was in her chamber, lying on the bed, on the best bed in the whole of Kaer Morhen. What is happening to Ciri? She is asleep. How long? Too long, he interrupted. He covered her with the duvet and put his arms around her. As he leaned over, the wolf's head medallion swayed just above her face. What you did was not the best of ideas, Triss. Everything is all right, she trembled in his embrace. That's not true, she thought. Nothing is all right. She turned her face so that the medallion didn't touch her. There were many theories about the properties of witcher amulets, and none advised magicians to touch them during the equinox. Did did we say anything during the trance? You? Nothing. You were unconscious throughout. Ciri, just before she woke up, said, Avias, Diret, Ep, I again. She knows the Elder Speech? Not enough to say a whole sentence. A sentence, a sentence which means something is ending. The magician wiped her face with her hand. Geralt, this is a serious matter. The girl is an exceptionally powerful medium. I don't know what or who she is contacting, but I think there are no limits to her connection. Something wants to take possession of her, something which is too powerful for me. I am afraid for her. Another trance could end in mental illness. I have no control over it. I don't know how to, can't. If it proved necessary, I would not be capable to block or suppress her powers. I would not even be capable, if there were no other option, of permanently extinguishing them. You have to get help from another magician, a more gifted one, more experienced. You know who I'm talking about. I do. He turned his head away, clenched his lips. Don't resist. Don't defend yourself. I can guess why you turned to me rather than her. Overcome your pride. Crush your rancor and obstinacy. There is no point to it. You'll torture yourself to death, and you are risking Ciri's health and life in the process. Another trance is liable to be more dangerous to her than the trial of the grasses. Ask Yennefer for help, Geralt. And you, Triss? What about me? She swallowed with difficulty. I'm not important. I let you down. I let you down. In everything. I was I was your mistake. Nothing more. Mistakes, he said with effort, are also important to me. I don't cross them out of my life or memory, and I never blame others for them. You are important to me, Triss, and always will be. You never let me down. Never. Believe me. She remained silent for a long while. I will stay until spring, she said finally, struggling against her shaking voice. I will stay with Ciri. I will watch over her, day and night. I will be with her day and night. And when spring is here, we will take her to Melitel's temple in Elendar. The thing that wants to possess her might not be able to reach her in that temple. And then you will ask Yennefer for help. All right, Triss. Thank you. Geralt? Yes. Ciri said something else, didn't she? Something only you heard. Tell me what it was. No, he protested, and his voice quivered. No, Triss. Please. She wasn't speaking to me. I know. She was speaking to me. Tell me, please. After coming to, when I picked her up, she whispered, Forget about him. Don't torture him. I won't, she said quietly, but I can't forget. Forgive me. I am the one who ought to be asking for forgiveness, and not only asking you. You love her that much, she stated, not asking. That much, he admitted in a whisper, after a long moment of silence. Geralt? Yes, Triss. Stay with me tonight. Triss, only stay. All right. Not long after Middenvern, the snow stopped falling. The frost came. Triss stayed with Ciri day and night. She watched over her. She surrounded her with care, visible and invisible. The girl woke up shouting almost every night. She was delirious, holding her cheek and crying with pain. The magician calmed her with spells and elixirs, put her to sleep, cuddling and rocking her in her arms. And then she herself would be unable to sleep for a long time, thinking about what Ciri had said in her sleep, and after she came to, and she felt a mounting fear. Vias, there up again. Something is ending. That is how it was for 10 days and nights. And finally it passed. It ended, disappeared without a trace. Ciri calmed. She slept peacefully with no nightmares and no dreams. But Triss kept a constant watch. She did not leave the girl for a moment. She surrounded her with care, visible and invisible. Faster, Ciri. Lunge, attack, dodge, half pirouette, thrust, dodge, balance. Balance with your left arm or you'll fall from the comb, and you'll hurt your womanly attributes. What? Nothing. Aren't you tired? We'll take a break if you like. No, Lambert, I can go on. I'm not that weak, you know. Shall I try jumping over every other post? Don't you dare. You might fall and the marigold will tear my head off. I won't fall. I've told you once and I'm not going to say it again. Don't show off. Steady on your legs. And breathe, Ciri. Breathe. You're panting like a dying mammoth. That's not true. Don't squeal. Practice. Attack. Dodge. Parry. Half pirouette. Parry. Full pirouette. Steadier on the posts, damn it. Don't wobble. Lunge. Thrust. Faster. Half pirouette. Jump and cut. That's it. Very good. Really? Was that really very good, Lambert? Who said so? You did. A moment ago. Slip of the tongue. Attack. Half pirouette. Dodge. And again. Ciri, where was that parry? How many times do I have to tell you? After you dodge, you always parry. Deliver a blow with the blade to protect your head and shoulders. Always. Even when I'm only fighting one opponent? You never know what you're fighting. You never know what's happened behind you. You always have to cover yourself. Foot and sword work. It's got to be a reflex. Reflex, understand? You mustn't forget that. You forget it in a real fight, and you're finished. Again. At last. That's it. See how such a parry lands? You can take any strike from it. You can cut backwards from it, if you have to. Right. Show me a pirouette and thrust backwards. Ha! Very good. You see the point now? It has got through to you. I'm not stupid. You're a girl. Girls don't have brains. Lambert, if Triss heard that. If ifs and ands were pots and pans. All right, that's enough. Come on. We'll take a break. I'm not tired, but I am. I said a break. Come down from the comb. Turning a somersault? What do you think? Like a hen off its roost? Go on, jump. Don't be afraid. I'm here for you. Ha! Nice. Very good. For a girl. You can take off the blindfold now. Triss, maybe that's enough for today. What do you think? Maybe we could take the sleigh and ride down the hill. The sun's shining, the snow's sparkling so much it hurts my eyes. The weather's beautiful. Don't lean out or you'll fall from the window. Let's go sleighing, Triss. Suggest that again in elder speech, and we'll end the lesson there. Move away from the window. Come back to the table. Ciri, how many times do I have to ask you? Stop waving that sword about and put it away. It's my new sword. It's real. A witcher's sword. Made of steel, which fell from heaven. Really. Geralt said so, and he never lies. You know that? Oh yes, I know that. I've got to get used to the sword. Uncle Visimir had it adjusted just right for my height and weight and arm length. I've got to get my hand and wrist accustomed to it. Accustom yourself to your heart's content, but outside, not here. Well, I'm listening. You wanted to suggest we get the sleigh out? In elder speech. So suggest it. Hmm. What's sleigh? Sled as a noun. A sled as a verb. Ah. Vein a sled. Alea? Don't end a questionable way. It's impolite. You form questions using intonation. But the children from the islands, you're not learning the local Skellige jargon, but classical elder speech. And why am I learning the speech? Tell me. So that you know it. It's fitting to learn things you don't know. Anyone who doesn't know other languages is handicapped. But people only speak the common tongue anyway. True, but some speak more than just it. I warrant, Siri, that it is better to count yourself amongst the very few than amongst everyone. So I'm listening. A full sentence. The weather today is beautiful, so let's get the sleigh. Elaine, mm, Elaine, Ted, take it, Van, a sled. Very good. Ha! So let's get the sleigh. We will, but let me finish applying my makeup. And who are you putting makeup on for exactly? Myself. A woman accentuates her beauty for her own self-esteem. Hmm. Do you know what? I feel pretty poorly too. Don't laugh, Triss. Come here, sit on my knee, put the sword away. I've already asked you. Thank you. Now take that large brush and powder your face. Not so much, girl, not so much. Look in the mirror. See how pretty you are? I can't see any difference. I'll do my eyes, all right? What are you laughing at? You always paint your eyes. I want to, too. Fine. Here you are. Put some shadow on your eyelids with this. Siri, don't close both your eyes or you won't see anything. You're smudging your whole face. Take a tiny bit and only skim over the eyelids. Skim, I said. Let me. I'll just spread it a little. Close your eyes. Now open them. Ooh! See the difference? A tiny bit of shadow won't do any harm, even to such beautiful eyes as yours. The elves knew what they were doing when they invented eyeshadow. Elves? You didn't know? Makeup is an elvish invention. We've learned a lot of useful things from the elder people, and we've given bloody little back in return. Now, take the pencil and draw a thin line across your upper lids, just above the lashes. Siri, what are you doing? Don't laugh. My eyelid's trembling, that's why. Part your lips a little and it'll stop trembling. See? Oh, come on. Now we'll go and stun the witchers with our beauty. It's hard to find a prettier sight. And then we'll take the sleigh and smudge our makeup in the deep snowdrifts. And we'll make ourselves up again? No. We'll tell Lambert to warm the bathroom, and we'll take a bath. Again? Lambert says we're using too much fuel with our baths. Lambert, can me a bath a ars. What? I didn't understand. With time, you'll master the idioms too. We've still got a lot of time for studying before spring, but now, Vean is led, me Elaine Lune. Here, on this engraving. No, damn it, not on that one. On this one. This is, as you already know, a ghoul. Tell us, Siri, what you've learned about ghouls. Hey, look at me. What the devil have you got on your eyelids? Greater self-esteem? What? Never mind, I'm listening. Hmm. The ghoul, Uncle Vesemir, is a corpse-devouring monster. It can be in cemeteries, in the vicinity of barrows, anywhere the dead are buried, a necropolia, on battlegrounds, on fields of battle. So it's only a danger to the dead, is that right? No, not only. A ghoul may also attack the living if it's hungry or falls into a fury. If, for example, there's a battle, a lot of people killed. What's the matter, Siri? Nothing. Siri, listen. Forget about that. That will never return. I saw in Sodden and in Transriver entire fields. They were lying there, being eaten by wolves and wild dogs. Birds were picking at them. I guess there were ghouls there too. That's why you're learning about ghouls now, Siri. When you know about something, it stops being a nightmare. When you know about how to fight something, it stops being so threatening. So how do you fight a ghoul, Siri? With a silver sword. The ghoul is sensitive to silver. And to what else? Bright light and fire. So you can fight it with light and fire? You can, but it's dangerous. A witcher doesn't use light or fire because it makes it harder to see. Every light creates a shadow, and shadows make it harder to get your bearings. One must always fight in darkness, by moon or starlight. Quite right. You remembered it well, clever girl. And now look here, at this engraving. Aoe. Oh well, true enough. It's not a beautiful creature. It's a gravier. A gravier is a type of ghoul. It looks very much like a ghoul, but is considerably larger. He can also be told apart, as you can see, by these three bony combs on his skull. The rest is the same as any other corpse eater. Take note of the short, blunt claws, adapted for digging up graves and churning the earth. Strong teeth for shattering bones, and a long, narrow tongue used to lick the decaying marrow from them. Such stinking marrow is a delicacy for the gravier. What's the matter? Nothing. You're completely pale and green. You don't eat enough. Did you eat breakfast? Yes, I did. What was I? Aha! I almost forgot. Remember, because this is important, graviers, like ghouls and other monsters in this category, do not have their own ecological niche. They're relicts from the age of the interpretation of spheres. Killing them does not upset the order and interconnections of nature which prevail in our present sphere. In this sphere, these monsters are foreign, and there is no place for them. Do you understand, Siri? I do, Uncle Vesemir. Geralt explained it to me. I know all that. An ecological niche is... All right, that's fine. I know what it is. If Geralt has explained it to you, you don't have to recite it to me. Let us return to the Gravier. Graviers appear quite rarely, fortunately, because they're bloody dangerous son of bitches. The smallest wound inflicted by a Gravier will infect you with corpse venom. Which elixir is used to treat corpse venom poisoning, Siri? Golden Oriole. Correct, but it is better to avoid infection to begin with. That is why, when fighting a Gravier, you must never get close to the bastard. You always fight from a distance and strike from a leap. And where's the best one to strike? We're just getting to that. Look. Once more, Siri. We'll go through it slowly so you can master each move. Now, I'm attacking you with tierce, taking the position as if to thrust. Why are you retreating? Because I know it's a feint. You can move into a wide sinistra or strike with upper quarter, and I'll retreat and parry with a counter feint. Is that so? And if I do this? Ah! It was supposed to be slow. What did I do wrong, Cohen? Nothing. I'm just taller and stronger than you are. That's not fair. There's no such thing as a fair fight. You have to make use of every advantage and every opportunity that you get. By retreating, you gave me the opportunity to put more force into the strike. Instead of retreating, you should have executed a half pirouette to the left and tried to cut me from the throat from below with a quarter dextra under the chin from the cheek or throat. As if you'd let me. You'll do a reverse pirouette and get my neck from the left before I can parry. How am I meant to know what you're doing? You have to know. And you do know. Oh, sure. Siri, what we're doing is fighting. I'm your opponent. I want to and have to defeat you because my life is at stake. I'm taller and stronger than you, so I'm going to watch for opportunities to strike in order to avoid or break your parry, as you've just seen. What do I need a pirouette for? I'm already in Sinistra, see? What could be simpler than to strike with a second under the arm on the inside? If I slash your artery, you'll be dead in a couple of minutes. Defend yourself. Ha! Very good. A beautiful, quick parry. See how exercising your wrist has come in useful? And now pay attention. A lot of fencers make the mistake of executing a standard parry and freeze for a second, and just when you catch them out, strike. Like so. Ha! Beautiful. Now jump away. Jump away immediately. Pirouette. I could have a dagger in my left hand. Good. Very good. And now, Siri, what am I going to do now? How am I to know? Watch my feet. How is my body weight distributed? What can I do from this position? Anything. So spin. Spin. Force me to open up. Defend yourself. Good. And again. Good. And again. Ow! Not so good. Ugh. What did I do wrong? Nothing. I'm just faster. Take your guards off. We'll sit for a moment. Take a break. You must be tired. You've been running the trail all morning. I'm not tired. I'm hungry. Bloody hell, so am I. And today's Lambert's turn, and he can't cook anything other than noodles. If he could only cook those properly. Cohen? Uh-huh. I'm still not fast enough. You're very fast. Will I ever be as fast as you? I doubt it. Hmm. And you are? And are you? Who's the best fencer in the world? I have no idea. You've never known one? I have known many who believed themselves to be the best. Oh, what were they? What were their names? What could they do? Hold on, girl. I haven't got an answer to those questions. Is it all that important? Of course it's important. I'd like to know who these fencers are and where they are. Where they are? I know that. Aha, so where are they? In cemeteries. Pay attention, Siri. We're going to attach a third pendulum now. You can manage two already. You use the same steps as for two, only there's one more dodge. Ready? Yes. Focus yourself. Relax. Breathe in, breathe out, attack. Ouch! Ow! Damn it! Don't swear. Did it hit you hard? No, it only brushed me. What did I do wrong? You ran in at too even a pace. You sped the second half pirouette up a bit too much, and your feint was too wide, and as a result, you were carried straight under the pendulum. But Geralt, there's no room for a dodge and turn there. They're too close to each other. There's plenty of room, I assure you, but the gaps are worked out to force you to make arithmetic moves. This is a fight, Siri, not ballet. You can't move arithmetically in a fight. You have to distract the opponent with your moves. Confuse his reactions. Ready for another try? Ready. Start those damn logs swinging. Don't swear. Relax. Attack. Ha! Ha! Well, how was that? How was that, Geralt? It didn't even brush me. You didn't even brush the second sack with your sword. So I repeat, this is a fight. Not ballet, not aerobatics. What are you muttering now? Nothing. Relax. Adjust the bandage on your wrist. Don't grip the hilt so tightly. It distracts you and upsets your equilibrium. Breathe calmly. Ready? Yes. Go. Ouch! May you... Geralt, it's impossible. There's not enough room for a feint and a change of foot, and when I strike from both legs without a feint, I saw what happens when you strike without a feint. Does it hurt? No, not so much. Sit down next to me. Take a break. I'm not tired, Geralt. I'm not going to be able to jump over that third pendulum, even if I rest for 10 years. I can't be any faster. And you don't have to be. You're fast enough. Tell me how to do it then. Half pirouette, dodge, hit at the same time? It's very simple. You just weren't paying attention. I told you before you started. An additional dodge is necessary. Displacement. An additional half pirouette is superfluous. The second time around, you did everything well and passed all the pendulums. But I didn't hit the sack because, Geralt, without half pirouette, I can't strike because I lose speed. I don't have the, what do you call it? Impetus. That's true. So gain some impetus and energy, but not throw a pirouette and change a foot because it's not enough time for it. Hit the pendulum with your sword. The pendulum? I've got to hit the sacks? This is a fight, Siri. The sacks represent your opponent's sensitive areas. You've got to hit them. The pendulums, which simulate your opponent's weapon, you have to avoid, dodge past. When the pendulum hits you, you're wounded. In a real fight, you might not get up again. The pendulum mustn't touch you, but you can hit the pendulum. Why are you screwing your nose up? I'm not going to be able to parry the pendulum with my sword. I'm too weak. I'll always be too weak, because I'm a girl. Come here, girl. Wipe your nose and listen carefully. No strongman, mountain-toppling giant, or muscle man is going to be able to parry a blow aimed at him by a Draco lizard's tail, a gigascorpion's pincers, or a griffin's claws, and that's precisely the sort of weapons the pendulum simulates. So don't even try to parry. You're not deflecting the pendulum. You're deflecting yourself from it. You're intercepting its energy, which you need in order to deal a blow. A light but very swift deflection, an instantaneous, equally swift blow from a reverse half-turn is enough. You're picking impetus up by rebounding. Do you see? Mm-hmm. Speed, Siri, not strength. Strength is necessary for a lumberjack axing trees in a forest. That's why, admittedly, girls are rarely lumberjacks. Have you got that? Mm-hmm. Start the pendulum swinging. Take a rest first. I'm not tired. You know how to now? The same steps, faint. I know. Attack. Ha, ha, ha. Got you. I got you, you griffin. Carol! Did you see that? Don't yell. Control your breathing. I did it. I really did it. I managed it. Praise me, Geralt. Well done, Ciri. Well done, girl. In the middle of February, the snow disappeared, whisked away by a warm wind blowing from the south from the pass. Whatever was happening in the world, the Witchers did not want to know. In the evenings, consistently and determinedly, Triss guided the long conversations held in the dark hall, lit only by the bursts of flames in the great hearth, towards politics. The Witcher's reactions were always the same. Geralt, a hand on his forehead, did not say a word. Vesemir nodded from time to time, throwing in comments which amounted to little more than that, in his day, everything had been better, more logical, more honest, and healthier. Eskel pretended to be polite, but neither smiled nor made eye contact, and even managed, very occasionally, to be interested in some issue or question of little importance. Cohen yawned openly and looked at the ceiling, and Lambert did nothing to hide his disdain. They did not want to know anything. They cared for nothing, they cared nothing for dilemmas which drove sleep from kings, wizards, rulers, and leaders, or for the problems which made councils, circles, and gatherings tremble and buzz. For them, nothing existed beyond the passes drowning in snow, or beyond the Gwenlek River carrying ice floats and its leaden current. For them, only Kaer Morhen existed, lost and lonely amongst the savage mountains. That evening Triss was irritable and restless. Perhaps it was the wind howling along the great castle's walls. And that evening they were all oddly excited. The Witchers, apart from Geralt, were unusually talkative. Quite obviously, they only spoke of one thing, spring, and about their approaching departure for the trail. About what the trail would have in store for them. About vampires, wyverns, leshies, lycanthropes, and basilisks. This time it was Triss who began to yawn and stare at the ceiling. This time she was the one who remained silent, until Esker turned to her with a question which she had anticipated. And what is it really like in the south on the Yaruga? Is it worth going there? We wouldn't like to find ourselves in the middle of any trouble. What do you mean by trouble? Well, you know, he stammered. You keep telling us about the possibility of a new war. about constant fighting on the borders, about rebellions in the lands invaded by Nilfgaard. You say they're saying the Nilfgaardians might cross the Yaruga again. So what? Said Lambert. They've been hitting, killing, and striking each other constantly for hundreds of years. It's nothing to worry about. I've already decided. I'm going to the far south, to Sodden, Mahakam, and Engren. It's well known that monsters abound wherever armies have passed. The most money is always made in places like that. True, Cohen acknowledged. The neighborhood grows deserted. Only women who can't fend for themselves remain in the villages. Scores of children with no home or care roaming around. Easy prey attracts monsters. And the lord barons and village elders, added Eskil, have their heads full of the war and don't have time to defend their subjects. They have to hire us, it's true, but from what Triss has been telling us all these evenings, it seems the conflict with Nilfgaard is more serious than that, not just some local little war. Is that right, Triss? Even if it were the case, said the magician spitefully, surely that suits you? A serious, bloody war will lead to more deserted villages, more widowed women, simply hordes of orphaned children. I can't understand your sarcasm. Geralt took his hand away from his forehead. I really can't, Triss. Nor I, my child. Vizimir raised his head. What do you mean? Are you thinking about the widows and children? Lambert and Cohen speak frivolously, as youngsters do, but it is not the words that are important. After all, they defend these children, she interrupted crossly. Yes, I know, from the werewolf who might kill 2 or 3 a year, while a Nilfgaardian foray can kill and burn an entire settlement in an hour. Yes, you defend orphans, while I fight that there should be as few of those orphans as possible. I'm fighting the cause, not the effect. That's why I'm on Foltest and Temeria's council and sit with Furkat, Cart, and Kira Metz. We deliberate on how to stop war from breaking out, and, should it come to it, how to defend ourselves, because war is constantly hovering over us like a vulture. For you, it's an adventure. For me, it's a game in which the stakes are survival. I'm involved in this game, and that's why your indifference and frivolity hurt and insult me. Geralt sat up and looked at her. We're witchers, Triss. Can't you understand that? What's there to understand? The enchantress crossed her chest, tossed her chestnut mane back. Everything's crystal clear. You've chosen a certain attitude to the world around you. The fact that this world might at any moment fall to pieces has a place in this choice. In mine, it doesn't. That's where we're different. I'm not sure it's only there we differ. The world is falling to ruins, she repeated. We can watch it happen and do nothing, or we can counteract it. Yeah, Bobo, I understand that one. How? He smiled dervishly. With our emotions? She did not answer, turning her face to the fire roaring in the hearth. The world is falling to ruins, repeated Cohen, nodding his head in fainted thoughtfulness. How many times have I heard that? Me too, Lambert grimaced. And it's not surprising. It's a popular saying of late. It's what kings say when it turns out that a modicum of brains is necessary to rule after all. It's what merchants say when greed and stupidity have led them to bankruptcy. It's what wizards say when they start to lose their influence on politics or income. And the people they're speaking to should expect some sort of proposal straight away. So cut the introduction short, Triss, and present us with your proposition. Verbal squabbling has never amused me, the enchantress declared, gauging him with cold eyes, or displays of eloquence which mock whoever you're talking to. I don't intend to take part in anything like that. You know only too well what I mean. You want to hide your heads in the sand. That's your business. But coming from you, Geralt, it's a great surprise. Triss, the white-haired witcher, looked her straight in the eyes again. What do you expect from me? To take an active part in the fight to save the world which is falling to pieces? Am I to enlist in the army to stop Nilfgaard? Should I, if it comes to another battle for Sodden, stand with you on the hill, shoulder to shoulder, and fight for freedom? I'd be proud, she said quietly, lowering her head. I'd be proud and happy to fight at your side. I believe that, but I'm not gallant enough, nor valiant enough. I'm not suited to be a soldier or a hero, and having an acute fear of pain, mutilation, and death is not the only reason. You can't stop a soldier from being frightened, but you can give him motivation to help him overcome that fear. I have no such motivation. I can't have. I'm a witcher, an artificially created mutant. I kill monsters for money. I defend children when their parents pay me to. If Nilfgaardian parents pay me, I'll defend Nilfgaardian children, and even if the world lies in ruin, which does not seem likely to me, I'll carry on killing monsters in the ruins of this world until some monster kills me. That is my fate, my reason, my life, and my attitude to the world. It is not what I chose. It was chosen for me. You're embittered, she stated, tugging nervously at a strand of hair, or pretending to be. You forget that I know you, so don't play the unfeeling mutant, devoid of a heart, of scruples, and of his own free will, in front of me. And the reasons for your bitterness, I can guess and understand. Ciri's prophecy, correct? No, not correct, he answered icily. I see that you don't know me at all. I'm afraid of death, just like everyone else, but I grew used to the idea of it a very long time ago. I'm not under any illusions. I'm not complaining about fate, Triss. This is plain, cold calculation. Statistics. No witcher has died of old age, lying in bed, dedicating his will. Not a single one. Ciri didn't surprise or frighten me. I know I am going to die in some cave which stinks of carcasses, torn apart by a griffin, lamia, or manticore, but I don't want to die in a war, because they're not my wars. I'm surprised at you, she replied sharply. I'm surprised that you are saying this. Surprised by your lack of motivation, as you learned as you learnedly chose to describe your supercilious distance and indifference. You were at Sodden, Argren, and Transriver. You know what happened to Cintra. You know what befell Queen Calanthe and many thousands of people there. You know the hell Ciri went through, know why she cries out at night. And I know, too, because I was also there. I'm afraid of pain and death, too, even more so now than I was back then. I have good reason. As for your motivation, it seems to me that back then I had just as little as you. Why should I, a magician, care about the fates of Sodden, Brugge, Cintra, or other kingdoms? The problems of having more or less competent rulers? The interests of merchants and barons? I was a magician. I, too, could have said it wasn't my war, that I could mix elixirs for the Nilfgaardians on the ruins of the world, but I stood on that hill next to Bilgeforas, next to Artaud Terra Nova, next to Furkart, next to Enid Findabair, next to Philippa Eilhart, next to your Yennefer, next to those who no longer exist, Coral, Yoan, Vaniel. There was a moment when out of sheer terror I forgot all my spells, except for one, and thanks to that spell I could have teleported myself from that horrific place back home to my tiny little tower in Maribor. There was a moment when I threw up from fear, when Yennefer and Coral held me up by the shoulders and hair. Stop. Please stop. No, Geralt, I won't. After all, you want to know what happened there on the hill. So listen. There was a din and flames. There were flaming arrows and exploding balls of fire. There were screams and crashes, and I suddenly found myself on the ground, on a pile of charred, smoking rags. and I realized that the pile of rags was Yoel, and that things next to her, that awful thing, that trunk with no arms and no legs which was screaming horrifically, was Coral. And I thought the blood in which I was lying was Coral's blood, but it was my own. And then I saw that they had what they had done to me, and I started to howl, howl like a beaten dog, like a battered child. Leave me alone. Don't worry, I'm not going to cry. I'm not a little girl from the tiny tower in Maribor anymore. Damn it, I'm Triss Marigold, the 14th one killed at Sodden. There are 14 graves at the foot of the obelisk on the hill, but only 13 bodies. You're amazed such a mistake could have been made. Most of the corpses were in hard-to-recognize pieces. No one identified them. The living were hard to account for, too. Of those who had known me well, Yennefer was the only one to survive, and Yennefer was blind. Others knew me fleetingly, and always recognized me by my beautiful hair, and I, damn it, didn't have it any more. Geralt held her closer. She no longer tried to push him away. They used the highest magics on us, she continued in a muted voice. Spells, elixirs, amulets, and artifacts. Nothing was left wanting for the wounded heroes of the hill. We were cured, patched up, our former appearances returned to us, our hair and sight restored. You can hardly see the marks. But I will never wear a plunging neckline again, Geralt. Never. The Witchers said nothing. Neither did Ciri, who had slipped into the hall without a sound and stopped at the threshold, hunching her shoulders and folding her arms. So, the magician said after a while, don't talk to me about motivation. Before we stood on that hill, the chapter simply told us, this is what you have to do. Whose war was it? What were we defending there? The land? The borders? The people in their cottages? The interests of kings? The wizard's influence and income? Order against chaos? I don't know. But we defended it because that was what had to be done. And if the need arises, I'll stand on the hill again. Because if I don't, it will make the sacrifices made in the first time futile and unnecessary. I'll stand beside you, shouted Ciri shrilly. Just wait and see. I'll stand with you. Those Nilfgaardians are going to pay for my grandmother, pay for everything. I haven't forgotten. Be quiet, growled Lambert. Don't butt into grown-ups' conversations. Oh, sure. The girl stamped her foot, and her eyes, a green fire kindled. Why do you think I am learning to fight with a sword? I want to kill him, the Black Knight from Cintra with wings on his helmet, for what he did to me, for making me afraid. And I'm going to kill him. That's why I'm learning it. And therefore you'll stop learning, said Geralt in a voice colder than the walls of Kaer Morhen, until you understand what a sword is, and what purpose it serves in a witcher's hand. You will not pick one up. You are not learning in order to kill and be killed. You are not learning to kill out of fear and hatred, but in order to save lives, your own and those of others. The girl bit her lip, shaking from agitation and anger. Understood? Ciri raised her head abruptly. No. Then you'll never understand. Get out. Geralt, get out. Ciri spun on her heel and stood still for a moment, undecided, as if waiting for something that could not happen. And she ran swiftly up the stairs. They heard the door slam. Too severe, Wolf, said Vesemir. Much too severe. And you shouldn't have done it in Triss's presence. The emotional ties? Don't talk to me about emotions. I've had enough of all of this talk about emotions. And why is that? The magician smiled dervishly and coldly. Why, Geralt? Ciri is normal. She has normal feelings. She accepts emotions naturally, takes them for what they really are. You, obviously, don't understand, and therefore surprised by them. It surprises and irritates you. The fact that someone can experience normal love, normal hatred, normal fear, pain and regret, normal joy and normal sadness. That it is coolness, distance, and indifference which are considered abnormal. Oh yes, Geralt, it annoys you. It annoys you so much that you are starting to think about Kaer vaults, about the laboratorium, the dusty demijohns full of mutagenic poisonings. Triss, called Vesemir, gazing at Geralt's face, suddenly grown pale. But the enchantress refused to be interrupted and spoke faster and faster, louder and louder. Who do you want to deceive, Geralt? Me? Her? Or maybe yourself? Maybe you don't want to admit the truth, a truth everyone knows except you. Maybe you don't want to accept the fact that human emotions and feelings weren't killed in you by the elixirs and grasses. You killed them. You killed them yourself. But don't you dare kill them in this child. Silence, he shouted, leaping from the chair. Silence, Marigold. He turned away and lowered his arms defenselessly. Sorry, he said quietly. Forgive me, Triss. He made his way for the stairs quickly, but the enchantress was up in a flash and threw herself at him, embracing him. You are not leaving here alone, she whispered. I won't let you be alone. Not right now. They knew immediately where she had run to. Fine, wet snow had fallen that evening and had covered the forecourt with a thin, imperceptibly white carpet. In it they saw her footsteps. Ciri was standing on the very summit of the ruined wall, as motionless as a statue. She was holding the sword above her right shoulder, the cross-guard at eye level. The fingers of her left hand were lightly touching the pommel. On seeing them, the girl jumped, spun in a pirouette, and landed softly in an identical but reverse mirror position. Ciri, said the Witcher, come down, please. It seemed she hadn't heard him. She did not move, not even a muscle. Triss, however, saw the reflection of the moon thrown across her face by the blade, glistening silver over a stream of tears. No one's going to take the sword away from me, she shouted. No one, not even you. Come down, repeated Geralt. She tossed her head defiantly, and the next second leapt once more. A loose brick slipped beneath her foot with a grating sound. Ciri staggered, trying to find her balance, and failed. The Witcher jumped. Triss raised her hand, opened her mouth to utter a formula for levitation. She knew she couldn't do it in time. She knew that Geralt would not make it. It was impossible. Geralt did make it. He was forced down to the ground, thrown on his knees and back. He fell, but he did not let go of Ciri. The magician approached them slowly. She heard the girl whisper and sniff. Geralt, too, was whispering. She could not make out the words, but she understood their meaning. A warm wind howled in the crevices of the wall. The Witcher raised his head. Spring, he said quietly. Yes, she acknowledged, swallowing. There is still snow in the passes, but in the valleys it is already spring. Shall we leave, Geralt? You, Ciri, and I? Yes, it is high time. The misfortune behaved in the eternal manner of misfortunes and hawks. It hung over them for some while, waiting for an appropriate moment before it attacked. It chose this moment when they had passed the few settlements on the Gwenlet and Upper Burna, past Ard Carrigan, and plunged into the forest below, deserted and intersected by gorges. Like a hawk striking, this misfortune's aim was true. It fell accurately upon its victim, and its victim was Triss. Initially, it seemed nasty, but not too serious, resembling an ordinary stomach upset. Geralt and Ciri discreetly tried to take no notice of the stops the enchantress's ailment necessitated. Triss, as pale as death, beaded with sweat and painfully contorted, tried to continue riding for several hours longer, but about midday, and having spent an abnormally long time in the bushes by the road, she was no longer in any condition to sit on a saddle. Ciri tried to help her, but to no avail. The enchantress, unable to hold onto the horse's mane, slid down her mount's flank and collapsed to the ground. They picked her up and laid her on a cloak. Geralt unstrapped the saddlebags without a word, found a casket containing some magic elixirs, opened it, and cursed. All the phials were identical, and the mysterious signs on the seals meant nothing to him. Which one, Triss? None of them, she moaned, with both hands on her belly. I can't take them. What? Why? I'm sensitized. You? A magician. I'm allergic, she sobbed with hopeless exasperation and disparaging anger. I always have been. I can't tolerate elixirs. I can treat others with them, but I can only treat myself with amulets. Where is the amulet? I don't know. She ground her teeth. I must have left it in Kaer Morhen, or lost it. Damn it. What are we going to do? Maybe you should cast a spell on yourself. I've tried, and this is the result. I can't concentrate because of this cramp. Don't cry. Easy for you to say. The Witcher got up, pulled his saddlebags from Roach's back, and began rummaging through them. Triss curled up, her face contracted, and her lips twisted in a spasm of pain. Ciri? Yes, Triss. Do you feel all right? No unusual sensations? The girl shook her head. Maybe it's food poisoning. What did I eat? But we all ate the same thing. Geralt, wash your hands. Make sure Ciri washes her hands. Calm down. Drink this. What is it? Ordinary soothing herbs. There's next to no magic in them, so it shouldn't do you any harm. But they'll relieve the cramps. Geralt, the cramps, they're nothing. But if I run a fever, it could be dysentery or parathyroid. Aren't you immune? Triss turned her head away without replying, bit her lip, and curled up even tighter. The Witcher did not pursue the question. Having allowed her to rest for a while, they hauled the enchantress onto Roach's saddle. Geralt sat behind her, supporting her with both hands, while Ciri rode beside them, holding the reins and leading Triss's gelding. They did not even manage a mile. The enchantress kept falling from Geralt's hands. She could not stay in the saddle. Suddenly she started trembling convulsively, and instantly burned with a fever. The gastritis had grown worse. Geralt told himself that it was an allergic reaction to the traces of magic in his Witcher's elixir. He told himself that, but he did not believe it. "Oh, sir," said the sergeant, "you could not have come at a good time. Indeed, you could not have arrived at a worse moment." The sergeant was right. Geralt could neither contest it nor argue. The fort guarding the bridge, where there would usually be 3 soldiers, a stable boy, a toll collector, and, for most, a few passers-by, was swarming with people. The Witcher counted over 30 lightly armed soldiers wearing the colors of Cadwyn and a good 50 shield-bearers, camping around the low palisade. Most of them were lying by campfires, in keeping with the old soldier's rule which dictates that you sleep when you can and get up when you're woken. Considerable activity could be seen through the thrown-open gates. There were a lot of people and horses inside the fort, too. At the top of the little leaning lookout tower, 2 soldiers were on duty, with their crossbows permanently at the ready. On the worn bridge, trampled by horses' hoofs, 6 peasant carts and 2 merchant wagons were marked. In the enclosure, their heads lowered sadly over the mud and manure, stood umpteen unyoked oxen. "There was an assault on the fort last night." The sergeant anticipated his question. "We just got here in time with the relief troops. Otherwise, we'd have found nothing here but charred earth." "Who were your attackers? Bandits? Marauders?" The soldier shook his head, spat, and looked at Ciri and Triss, huddled in the saddle. "Come inside," he said. "Your enchantress is going to fall out of her saddle any minute now. We already have some wounded men there. 1 more won't make much difference." In the yard, in an open, roofed shelter, lay several people with their wounds dressed with bloodied bandages. A little farther, between the palisade fence and a wooden well with a seat, Geralt made out 6 still bodies wrapped in sacking from which only pairs of feet in worn, dirty boots protruded. Lay her there, by the wounded men. The soldier indicated the shelter. Oh, sir, it truly is bad luck she is sick. A few of our men were hurt during the battle, and we wouldn't turn down a bit of magical assistance. When we pulled the arrow out of one of them, its head stuck in his guts. The lad will peter out by the morning. He'll peter out like anything. And the enchantress who could have saved him is tossing and turning with a fever and seeking help from us. A bad time, I say, a bad time. He broke off, seeing that the Witcher could not tear his eyes from the sacking-wrapped bodies. 2 guards from here, 2 of our relief troops, and two of the others, he said, pulling up a corner of the stiff material. Take a look, if you wish. Ciri, step away. I want to see too. The girl leaned out around him, staring at the corpses with her mouth open. Step away, please. Take care of Triss. Ciri huffed, unwilling, but obeyed. Geralt came closer. Elves, he noted, not hiding his surprise. Elves, the soldier confirmed. Scoia'tael. Who? Scoia'tael, repeated the soldier. Forest bands. Strange name. It means squirrels, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, squirrels. That's what they call themselves in Elvish. Some say it's because sometimes they wear squirrel tails on their fur cap hats. Others say it's because they live in the woods and eat nuts. They're getting more and more troublesome, I tell you. Geralt shook his head. The soldier covered the bodies again and wiped his hands on his tunic. Come, he said. There's no point standing here. I'll take you to the commandant. Our corporal will take care of your patient, if he can. He knows how to sear and stitch wounds and set bones, so maybe he knows how to mix up medicines and what not to. He's a brainy chap, a mountain man. Come, Witcher. In the dim, smoky toll collector's hut, a lively and noisy discussion was under way. A knight with closely cropped hair, wearing a habergeon and yellow surcoat, was shouting at 2 merchants, and a grieve, watched by the toll collector, who had an indifferent, rather gloomy expression, and whose head was wrapped in bandages. I said no. The knight thumped his fist on the rickety table and stood up straight, adjusting the gorget across his chest. Until the patrols return, you're not going anywhere. You're not going to roam the highways. I's to be in Davin in 2 days, the grieve yelled, shoving a short, notched stick with a symbol branded into it under the knight's nose. I have a transport to lead. The bailiff's going to have me head if it be late. I'll complain to the voivode. Go ahead and complain, sneered the knight, but I advise you to line your breeches with straw before you do, because the voivode can do a mean bit of arse kickin'. But for the time being, I give the orders here. The voivode is far away, and your bailiff means no more to me than a heap of dung. Hey, Eunice, who are you bringing here, sergeant? Another merchant? No, answered the sergeant reluctantly. A witcher, sir. He goes by the name Geralt of Rivia. To Geralt's astonishment, the knight gave a broad smile, approached, and held out his hand in greeting. Geralt of Rivia, he repeated, still smiling. I have heard about you, and not just from gossip and hearsay. What brings you here? Geralt explained what brought him here. The knight's smile faded. You have not come at a good time, or to a good place. We're at war here, Witcher. A band of Scoia'tael is doing the rounds, and there's a skirmish yesterday. I am waiting here for relief forces, and then we will start a counterattack. You're fighting elves? Not just elves. Is it possible? Have you, a Witcher, not heard of the squirrels? No, I haven't. Where have you been these past 2 years? Beyond the seas? Here in Cadwyn, the Scoia'tael have made sure everybody's talking about them. They've seen it only too well. The first bands appeared just after the war with Nilfgaard broke out. The cursed non-humans took advantage of our difficulties. We were fighting in the south, and they began a guerrilla campaign at our rear. They counted on the Nilfgaardians defeating us, started declaring it was the end of human rule, and there would be a return to the old order. Humans to the sea. That's their battle cry, as they murder, burn, and plunder. It's your own fault with your own problem, the Grieve commented glumly, tapping his thigh with the notched stick, a mark of his position. Yours and all the other noblemen and knights. You're the ones who oppress the non-humans, would not allow them their way of life, and now you pay for it, while we've always moved goods this way and no one stopped us. We didn't need an army. Thank you, Tiger. What's true is true, said one of the merchants who had been sitting silently on the bench. The squirrels are no fiercer than the bandits who used to roam these ways. And who did the elves take in hand first? The bandits. What do I care if it's a bandit or an elf who runs me through with an arrow from behind some bushes? The toll collector with the bandaged head said stubbornly. The thatch, if it's set on fire above my head in the night, burns just the same. What difference does it make who lit the firebrand? You say, sir, that the Scoia'tael are no worse than the bandits. You lie. The bandits wanted loot, but the elves are after human blood. Not everyone has ducats, but we all have blood running through our veins. You say it's the nobility's problem, Grieve? What's an even greater folly? What about the lumberjacks shot in the clearing, the tar makers hacked to pieces at the beaches, the refugee peasants from the burned down hamlets? Did they hurt the non-humans? They lived and worked together as neighbors, and suddenly they got an arrow in the back. And me? Never in my life have I harmed a non-human, and look, my head is broken open by a dwarf's cutlass, and if it were not for the soldiers you're snapping at, I would be lying beneath an ell of turf. Exactly. The knight in the yellow surcoat thumped his fist against the table once again. We are protecting your mangy skin, Grieve, from those, as you call them, oppressed elves, who, according to you, we did not let live. But I will say something different. We have emboldened them too much. We tolerated them, treated them as humans, as equals, and now they are stabbing us in the back. Nilfgaard is paying them for it. I'd stake my life. And the savage elves from the mountains are furnishing them with arms. But the real support comes from those who always lived amongst us, from the elves, half-elves, dwarves, gnomes, and halflings. They're the ones who are hiding them, feeding them, supplying them with volunteers. Not all of them, said another merchant, slim, with a delicate and noble face. In no way a typical merchant's features. The majority of non-humans condemn the squirrels, sir, and want nothing to do with them. The majority of them are loyal, and sometimes pay a high price for that loyalty. Remember the burgomaster from Barnard? He was a half-elf who urged peace and cooperation. He was killed by an assassin's arrow, aimed, no doubt, by a neighbor, some halfling or dwarf, who also feinted loyalty, scoffed the knight. If you ask me, none of them are loyal. Every one of them. Hey there, who are you? Geralt looked around. Ciri stood right behind him, casting her huge emerald eyes over everyone. As far as the ability to move noiselessly was concerned, she had clearly made enormous progress. She's with me, he explained. Hmm. The knight measured Ciri with his eyes, and turned back to the merchant with the noble face, evidently considering him the most serious partner in the discussion. Yes, sir. Do not talk to me about loyal non-humans. They're all our enemies. It's just that some are better than others at pretending otherwise. Halflings, dwarves, and gnomes have lived amongst us for centuries, in some sort of harmony it would seem, but it sufficed for the elves to lift their heads, and all the others grabbed their weapons, and took to the woods too. I tell you, It was a mistake to tolerate the free elves and dryads with their forests and their mountain enclaves. It wasn't enough for them, and now they're yelling, "It's our world! Begone, strangers!" By the gods, we'll show them who will be gone, and of which race even the slightest traces will be wiped away. We beat the hides off the Nilfgaardians, and now we will do something about these rogue bands. It's not easy to catch an elf in the woods, said the Witcher, nor would I go after a gnome or dwarf in the mountains. How large are these units? Bands, corrected the knight. They're bands, Witcher. They can count up to 100 heads, sometimes more. They call each pack, a commando. It's a word borrowed from the gnomes. And in saying they are hard to catch, you speak truly. Evidently, you are a professional. Chasing them through the woods and thickets is senseless. The only way is to cut them off from their supplies, isolate them, starve them out. Seize the non-humans or helping them firmly by the scruff of their necks. Those from the towns and settlements, villages and farms. The problem is, said the merchant with the noble features, that we still don't know which of the non-humans are helping them and which aren't. Then we have to seize them all. Hello. Tank, what's up, buddy? You're obsessed with that raid thing, huh? How's it going? By the way, how was your stream? How's it going, Tank? How was your stream? Yeah. And how many do we have? I'm glad to hear it was good. That's funny. Well, I'm glad that you finally got a point. And if you need to raid and fade, go for it. And if you want to just sit and chat and fall asleep and chat, you can do that too, 'cause I saw Connor ninjured his way in. Yeah, hi there. Which might as well do a few shout outs now that I've noticed. Is don't have any mods here yet. And Sagral's asleep. Yeah, that's fair, that's fair. Looks like the shout outs are slightly borked. That's okay. I'll do the shout outs anyway. Web fishing. I need to do that sometime. I keep seeing it and I'm like, that looks interesting. Holy crap. How many of y'all were doing this? I see like 3 of you were just doing this. Well, I'm glad to hear it's fun.
Yeah, there was me. Sorry, I don't mean to spook you if I did.
Yep. Yep. I can't. Yeah.
My apologies.
It's alright.
Me, Panda, Helios, Neko, Asmo, Misquits, lots. I mean, we had a whole group of people that were sitting here playing that game today, and it is really fun. I really think you're gonna enjoy it.
Okay. If I ever actually get it.
It's like $5 on Steam.
Got it. But yeah, no, I literally just jumped.
I didn't mean. I'm sorry for spooking you.
No, it's good. Look at that little Connor.
Anyways,
Woo! Why did it do that?
enjoy your stream. Okay,
Okay.
don't go too crazy with everybody.
Woo.
Woo!
And he just went poof. There he is. Go. I'm gonna put you right there. Thank you, Tank. I appreciate it. Connor, you look almost like a little stuffed animal. It's adorable. Okay, where was I? The problem is, said the merchant with noble features, that we still don't know which of the non-humans are helping them and which isn't. Then we have to seize them all. Ah, the merchant smiled. I understand. I've heard that somewhere before. Take everyone by the scruff of their neck and throw them down to the mines, into enclosed camps, into quarries. Everyone. The innocent too. Women and children. Is that right? The knight raised his head and slammed his hand down on his sword hilt. Just so, and no other way, he said sharply. You pity the children, yet you're like a child yourself in this world, dear sir. A truce with Nilfgaard is a very fragile thing, like an eggshell. If not today, then the war might start anew tomorrow, and anything can happen in war. If they defeated us, what do you think would happen? I'll tell you what. Elven commandos would emerge from the forest. They'd emerge strong and numerous, and these loyal elements would instantly join them. Those loyal dwarves of yours, your friendly halflings, do you think they're going to talk of peace, of reconciliation then? No, sir. They'll be tearing our guts out. Nilfgaard is going to deal with us through their hands. They'll drown us in the sea, just as they promise. No, sir, we must not pussyfoot around them. It's either them or us. There's no third way. The door of the hut squeaked, and a soldier in a blooded apron stood in the doorway. Forgive me for disturbing you, he hawked. Which of you, noble sirs, is the one who brought the sick woman here? I did, said the Witcher. What happened? Come with me, please. They went out into the courtyard. It bodes not well for her, sir, said the soldier, indicating Triss. Fire water with pepper and saltpetre I gave her, but it be no good. I don't really. Geralt made no comment, because there was nothing to say. The magician, doubled over, was clear evidence of the fact that fire water with pepper and saltpetre was not something her stomach could tolerate. It could be some plague, the soldier frowned, or that, what's it called? Zentary? If it were to spread to our man. She's a wizard, protested the Witcher. Wizards don't fall sick. Just so, the knight said, who had followed them out and threw in cynically. Yours, I see, is just emanating good health. Geralt, listen to me. The woman needs help, and we cannot offer such, nor can I risk an epidemic amongst my troops. You understand. I understand. I will leave immediately. I have no choice. I have to turn back towards Staven or Ard Kerrigan or Carrig. You won't get far. The patrols have orders to stop everyone. Besides, it's dangerous. The Scoia'tael have gone in exactly that direction. I'll manage. From what I heard about you, the knight's lips twisted, I have no doubt you would. But bear in mind, you are not alone. You have a gravely sick woman on your shoulders, and this brat. Ciri, who was trying to clean her dung-smeared boot on a ladder rung, raised her head. The knight cleared his throat and looked down. Geralt smiled faintly. Over the last 2 years Ciri had almost forgotten her origins, and had almost entirely lost her royal manners and airs. But her glare, when she wanted, was very much like that of her grandmother, so much that Queen Calanthe would no doubt have been very proud of her granddaughter. Yes, what was I? The knight stammered, tugging at his belt with embarrassment. Geralt, sir, I know what you need to do. Cross beyond the river south. You will catch up with a caravan which is following the trail. Night is just around the corner, and the caravan is certain to stop for a rest. You will reach it by dawn. What kind of caravan? I don't know, the knight shrugged, but it is not a merchant or an ordinary convoy. It's too orderly, and the wagons are all the same, all covered. A royal bailiff's, no doubt. I allowed them to cross the bridge because they are following the trail south, probably toward the fjord on the Lexella. Hmm. The Witcher considered this, looking at Triss. That would be on my way, but will I find help there? Maybe yes, the knight said coldly. Maybe no. But you won't find it here. That's for sure. They did not hear or see him as he approached, engrossed as they were in the conversation, sitting around a campfire which, with its yellow light, cadaverously illuminated the canvas of the wagons. Arranged in a circle, Geralt gently pulled up his mare and forced her to neigh loudly. He wanted to warn the caravan, which had set up camp for the night, wanted to temper the surprise of having visitors and avoid a nervous reaction. He knew from experience that the release mechanisms on crossbows did not like nervous moves. The campers leapt up and, despite his warning, performed numerous agitated movements. Most of them, he saw at once, were dwarves. This reassured him somewhat. Dwarves, although extremely irascible, usually asked questions first, in situations such as these, and only then aimed their crossbows. "Who's that?" shouted one of the dwarves hoarsely, and with a swift, energetic move prised an axe from a stump by the campfire. "Who goes there?" "A friend." The Witcher dismounted. "I wonder whose," growled the dwarf. "Come closer. Hold your hands out so I can see them." Geralt approached, holding his hands out so they could see even by someone afflicted with conjunctivitis or night blindness. "Closer." He obeyed. The dwarf lowered his axe and tilted his head a little. "Either my eyes deceive me," he said, "or it's the Witcher Geralt of Rivia, or someone who looks damn like him." The fire suddenly shot up into flames, bursting in a golden brightness which drew faces and figures from the dark. "Yarpen Zigrin," declared Geralt, astonished. "None other than Yarpen Zigrin in person, complete with beard." "Ha!" The dwarf waved his axe as if it were an osier twig. The blade whirled in the air and cut into a stump with a dull thud. "Call the alarm off. This truly is a friend." The rest of the gathering visibly relaxed, and Geralt thought he heard deep sighs of relief. The dwarf walked up to him, holding out his hand. His grip could easily rival a pair of iron pincers. "Welcome, you warlock," he said. "Wherever you've come from and wherever you're going, welcome. Boys, over here. You remember my boy was Witcher. This is Yannick Brass, this one's Xavier Morin, and this one's Pauline Dalberg, and his brother Regan." Geralt didn't remember any of them, and besides, they all looked alike, bearded, stocky, practically square in their thick quilted jerkins. "There were 6 of you." One by one he squeezed the hard, gnarled hands offered him, if I remember correctly. You've a good memory, laughed Yarpen Zigram. There were 6 of us indeed, but Lucas Corto got married, settled down in Markham, dropped out of the company, the stupid oaf. Somehow we haven't managed to find anybody worthy of his place yet. Pity. 6 is just right. Not too ordinary, or not too many, not too few. To eat a calf, knock back a barrel, there's nothing like 6. As I see, with a nod, Geralt indicated the rest of the group standing undecided by the wagons. There are enough of you here to manage 3 calves, not to mention a quantity of poultry. What's this gang of fellows you're commanding, Yarpen? I'm not the one in command. Allow me to introduce you. Forgive me, Wenk, for not doing so right away, but me and my boys have known Geralt of Rivia for a long time. We've a fair number of shared memories behind us. Geralt, this is Commissar Wilfrid Wenk, in the service of King Henselt of Ard Carrig, the merciful ruler of Caedwyn. Wilfrid Wenk was taller than Geralt, and nearly twice the dwarf's height. He wore an ordinary, simple outfit, like that worn by greaves, bailiffs, or mounted messengers, but there was a sharpness in his movements, a stillness and sureness which the Witcher knew he could faultlessly recognize, even at night, even in the meagre light of the campfire. That was how men accustomed to wearing hauberks and belts weighed down with weapons moved. Wenk was a professional soldier. Geralt was prepared to wager any sum on it. He shook the proffered hand and gave a little bow. Let's sit down, Yarpen indicated to the stump where his mighty axe was still embedded. Tell us what you're doing in this neighborhood, Geralt. Looking for help. I'm journeying in a threesome with a woman and youngster. The woman is sick, seriously sick. I caught up with you to ask for help. Damn it, we don't have a medic here. The dwarf spat at the flaming logs. Where have you left them? Half a furlong from here, by the roadside. You lead the way. Hey, you there. 3 to the horses. Saddle the spare mounts. Geralt, will your sick woman hold up in the saddle? Not really. That's why I have to leave her there. Get the sheepskin canvas sheet and 2 poles from the wagon, quick. Wilfrid went, crossing his arms, hawked loudly. We're on the trail, Yarpen Zigrin said sharply, without looking at him. You don't refuse help on the trail. Damn it, Sharpen removed his palm from Triss's forehead. She's as hot as a furnace. I don't like it. What if it's typhoid or dysentery? It can't be typhoid or dysentery, Geralt lied with conviction, wrapping the horse blankets around the sick woman. Wizards are immune to those diseases. It's food poisoning. Nothing contagious. Well, all right. I'll rummage through the bags. I used to have some good medicine for the runs. Maybe there's still a little left. Ciri, muttered the Witcher, passing her a sheepskin unstrapped from the horse. Go to sleep. You're barely on your feet. No, not in the wagon. We'll put Triss in the wagon. You lie down next to the fire. No, she protested quietly, watching the dwarf walk away. I'm going to lie down next to her. When they see you keeping me away from her, they won't believe you. They'll think it's contagious and chase us away, like the soldiers in the fort. Geralt, the enchantress moaned suddenly. Where are we? Amongst friends. I'm here, said Ciri, stroking her chestnut hair. I'm at your side. Don't be afraid. You feel how warm it is here? A campfire's burning, and a dwarf is just going to bring some medicine for your stomach. Geralt, sobbed Triss, trying to disentangle herself from the blankets. No, no magic elixirs, remember? I remember. Lie peacefully. I've got to... Oh. The Witcher leaned over without a word, picked up the enchantress together in her cocoon of caparisons and blankets, and marched to the woods, into the darkness. Ciri sighed. She turned, hearing heavy panting. Behind the wagon appeared a dwarf, hefting a considerable bundle under his arm. The campfire flame gleamed on the blade of the axe behind his belt. The rivets on his heavy leather jerkin also glistened. Where's the sick one? He snarled. Flown away on a broomstick? Siri pointed to the darkness. Right, the dwarf nodded. I know the pain, and I've known the same nasty complaint. When I was younger, I used to eat anything I managed to find or catch or cut down, so I got food poisoning many a time. Who is she, the enchantress? Triss Marigold. I don't know her. Never heard of her. I rarely have anything to do with the Brotherhood anyway. Well, but it's polite to introduce oneself. I'm called Yarpen Zigrin. And what are you called, little goose? Something other than little goose, snarled Siri with a gleam in her eye. The dwarf chuckled and bared his teeth. Ah, he bowed in exaggeration. I beg your forgiveness. I didn't recognize you in the darkness. This isn't a goose, but a noble young lady. I fall at your feet. What is the young lady's name, if it is no secret? It is no secret. I'm Siri. Siri, aha! And who is the young lady? That, Siri turned her nose up proudly, is a secret. Yarpen snorted again. The young lady's little tongue is as sharp as a wasp. If the young lady will deign to forgive me, I've brought the medicine and little food. Will the young lady accept it, or will she send the old boar Yarpen Zigrin away? I'm sorry. Siri had second thoughts and lowered her head. Triss really does need help, Master Zigrin. She's very sick. Thank you for the medicine. It's nothing. The dwarf bared his teeth again and patted her shoulder amicably. Come on, Siri. You help me. The medicine has to be prepared. We'll roll some pellets according to my grandmother's recipe. Some pellets. No disease sitting in the guts will resist these kernels. He unwrapped the bundle, extracted something sharp like a piece of tuff, and a small clay vessel. Siri approached, curious. You should know, Siri, said Yarpen, that my grandmother knew her medicine like nobody's business. Unfortunately, she believed that the source of most disease is idleness, and idleness is best cured through the application of a stick. As far as my siblings and I were concerned, she chiefly used this cure preventatively. She beat us for anything and for nothing. She was a rare old hag, and once again, out of the blue, she gave me a chunk of bread with and dripping and sugar. It was such a surprise that I dropped it in astonishment, dripping down. So my gran gave me a thrashing, the nasty old bitch, and then she gave me another chunk of bread, only without the sugar. My grandmother, Siri nodded understanding, thrashed me once too, with a switch. A switch? The dwarf laughed. Mine whacked me once with a pickaxe handle, but that's enough reminiscing. We have to roll the pellets. Here, tear this up and mold it into little balls. What is it? It's sticky and messy. Ugh, what a stink. It's moldy oil meal bread. Excellent medicine. Roll it into little balls. Smaller, smaller. They're for a magician, not a cow. Give me one. Good. Now we're going to roll the ball in medicine. Ugh. Stinks? The dwarf brought his upturned nose closer to the clay pot. Impossible. Crushed garlic and bitter salt has no right to stink, even if it's 100 years old. It's foul. Ugh. Triss won't eat that. We'll use my grandmother's method. You squeeze her nose and I'll shove the pellets in. Yarpen, Geralt hissed, emerging abruptly from the darkness with the magician in his arms. Watch out, or I'll shove something down you. It's medicine, the dwarf took offense. It helps. Mold, garlic. Yes, moaned Triss weakly from the depths of her cocoon. It's true. Geralt, it really ought to help. See? Yarpen nudged Geralt with his elbow, turning his beard up proudly and pointing to Triss, who swallowed the pellets with a martyred expression. A wise magician. Knows what's good for her. What are you saying, Triss? The Witcher leaned over. Ah, I see. Yarpen, do you have any angelica or saffron? I'll have a look and ask around. I brought you some water and a little food. Thank you. But they both need rest above all. Ciri, lie down. I'll just make a compress for Triss. I'll I'll do it myself, Yarpen. I'd like to talk to you. Come to the fire. We'll broach a barrel. I want to talk to you. I don't need an audience. Quite the contrary. Of course, I'm listening. What sort of convoy is this? The dwarf raised his small, piercing eyes at him. The king's service, he said slowly and emphatically. It's what I thought. The Witcher held his gaze. Yarpen, I'm not asking out of any inappropriate curiosity. I know, and I also know what you mean. But this convoy is, special. So what are you transporting? Salt fish, said Yarpen casually, and proceeded to embellish his lie without batting an eye. Fodder, tools, harnesses, various odds and ends for the army. Wank is a quartermaster to the king's army. If he's a quartermaster, then I'm a druid, smiled Geralt. But that's your affair. I'm not in the habit of poking my nose into other people's secrets. But you can see the state Triss is in. Let us join you, Harpen. Let us put her in one of the wagons, just for a few days. I'm not asking where you're going until this trail goes straight to the south without forking. Or I'm not asking where you're going because this trail goes straight to the south without forking until past the Lixella, and it's a 10-day journey to the Lixella. By that time, the fever will have subsided, and Triss will be able to ride a horse. And even if she isn't, then I'll stop out of town beyond the river. 10 days in a wagon, well covered, hot food, please. I don't give the orders here. Wenk does. I don't believe you lack influence over him. Not in a convoy primarily made up of dwarves. Of course, he has to bear you in mind. Who is this Triss to you? What difference does it make in this situation? In this situation, none. I asked out of an inappropriate curiosity born of the desire to start new rumors going around the inns. But be that it as it may, you're mightily attracted to this enchantress, Geralt. The Witcher smiled sadly. And the girl, Yerpin indicated, Ciri with his head as she wriggled under the sheepskin. Yours? Mine, he replied without thinking. Mine, Zigrin. The dawn was gray, wet, and smelled of night rain and morning mist. Ciri felt she had slept no more than a few minutes, as though she had woken up the very minute she lay her head down on the sacks heaped on the wagon. Geralt was just settling Triss down next to her, having brought her in from another enforced expedition into the woods. The rugs cocooning the enchantress sparkled with dew. Geralt had dark circles under his eyes. Ciri knew he had not closed them for an instant. Triss had run a fever through the night and suffered greatly. Did I wake you? Sorry. Sleep, Ciri. It's still early. What's happening with Triss? How is she? Better, moaned the magician. Better, but listen, Geralt. I'd like to. Yes? The Witcher leaned over, but Triss was already asleep. He straightened himself, stretched. Geralt, whispered Ciri, are they going to let us travel in the wagon? We'll see, he bit his lip. Sleep while you can. Rest. He jumped down off the wagon. Ciri heard the sound of the camp packing up. Horses stamping, harnesses ringing, poles squeaking, swingle trees grating, and talking and cursing. And then, nearby, Yarpen Zigrin's hoarse voice called, and the calm voice of a tall man called Wank, and the cold voice of Geralt. She raised herself and carefully peered out from behind the canvas. I have no categorical indications on the matter, declared Wank. Excellent, the dwarf brightened. So the matter's settled? The commissaire raised his hand a little, indicating that he had not yet finished. He was silent for a while, and Geralt and Yarpen waited patiently. Nevertheless, Wank said finally, when it comes to the safe arrival of this caravan, it's my head on the line. Again he said nothing. This time no one interrupted. There was no question about it. One had to get used to the long intervals between sentences when speaking to the commissar. For its safe arrival, he continued after a moment, and for its timely arrival, caring for the sick woman might slow down the march. We're ahead of schedule on the route, Yarpen assured him, after a significant pause. We're ahead of time, Wenk, sir. We won't miss the deadline. As for safety, I don't think the Witcher's company will harm that. The trail leads through the woods right up to the Lixella, and to the right and left there's a wild forest, and rumor has it all sorts of evil creatures roam the forest. Indeed, the Commissar agreed, looking the Witcher straight in the eye. He seemed to be weighing out every single word. One can come across certain evil creatures in Cadwin Forest, lately incited by other evil creatures. They could jeopardize our safety. King Henselt, knowing this, empowered me to recruit volunteers to join our armed escort. Geralt, that would solve our problem. The Witcher's silence lasted a long while, longer than Wenk's entire speech. Interspersed through it had been with regular pauses. No, he said finally. No, Wenk. Let us put this clearly. I am prepared to repay the help given Lady Marigold, but not in this manner. I can groom the horses, carry water and firewood, even cook, but I will not enter the king's service as a soldier. Please don't count on my sword. I have no intention of killing those, as you call them, evil creatures on the order of other creatures whom I do not consider to be any better. Ciri heard Jorpen Zigrin hiss loudly and cough into his rolled-up sleeve. Wenk stared at the Witcher calmly. I see, he stated dryly. I like clear situations. All right, then. Zigrin, see to it that the speed of our progress does not slow down. As for you, Geralt, I know you will prove to be useful and helpful in any way you seem fit. It would be an affront to both of us if I were to treat your good stead as payment for aid offered to a suffering woman. Is she feeling better today? The Witcher gave a nod which seemed, to Ciri, to be somewhat deeper and politer than usual. Wenk's expression did not change. That pleases me, he said after a normal pause. In taking Lady Marigold aboard a wagon in my convoy, I take on the responsibility for her health, comfort, and safety. Zigrin, give the command to march out. Wenk. Yes, Geralt. Thank you. The Commissar bowed his head, a bit more deeply and politely, it seemed to Ciri, than the usual perfunctory politeness required. Yarpen Zigrin ran the length of the column, giving orders and instructions loudly, after which he clambered into the coachman's box, shouting and whipped the horse with the reins. The wagons jolted and rattled along the forest trail. The bump woke Triss up, but Ciri reassured her and changed the compress on her forehead. The rattling had a soporific effect, and the magician was soon asleep. Ciri, too, fell into dozing. When she woke, the sun was already high. She peered out between the barrels and packages. The wagon she was in was at the vanguard of the convoy. The one following them was being driven by a dwarf with a red kerchief tied around his neck. From conversations between the dwarves, she had gathered that his name was Pauli Dalberg. Next to him sat his brother Regan. She also saw Wenk ride a horse, in the company of two bailiffs. Roach, Geralt's mare, tethered to the wagon, greeted her with a quiet neigh. She couldn't see her chestnut anywhere or Triss's dun. No doubt they were at the rear, with the convoy's spare horses. Geralt was sitting on the coachman's box next to Yarpen. They were talking quietly, drinking beer from a barrel perched between them. Ciri pricked up her ears, but soon grew bored. The discussion concerned politics and was mainly about King Henselt's intentions and plans, and some special service or missions to do with secretly aiding his neighbor, King Demowend of Eärden, who was being threatened by war. Geralt expressed interest about how 5 wagons of salted fish could help Eärden's defense. Yarpen, ignoring the gibe in Geralt's voice, explained that some species of fish were so valuable that a wagon loads would suffice to pay an armored company for a year. and each new armored company was a considerable help. Geralt was surprised that the aid had to be quite so secretive, to which the dwarf replied that was why the secret was a secret. Triss tossed in her sleep, shook the compress off, and talked indistinctly to herself. She demanded that someone called Kevin kept his hands to himself, and immediately after that declared that destiny cannot be avoided. Finally, having stated that everyone, absolutely everyone, is a mutant to a certain degree, she fell into a peaceful sleep. Ciri also felt sleepy, but was brought to her senses by Yarpen's chuckle, and he reminded Geralt of their past adventures. This one concerned a hunt for a gold dragon who, instead of allowing itself to be hunted down, had counted the hunter's bones and then eaten a cobbler called Goat Muncher. Ciri began to listen with greater interest. Geralt asked about what happened to the slashers, but Yarpen didn't know. Yarpen, in turn, was curious about a woman called Yennefer, at which Geralt grew oddly uncommunicative. The dwarf drank more beer, and started to complain that Yennefer still bore him a grudge, although a few good years had gone by since those days. I came across her at the market in Gorsvalen, he recounted. She barely noticed me. She spat like a she-cat and insulted my deceased mother horribly. I fled for all I was worth, but she shouted after me that she'd catch up with me one day and make grass grow out of my arse. Ciri giggled, imagining Yarpen with the grass. Geralt grunted something about women and their impulsive natures, which the dwarf considered far too mild a description for maliciousness, obstinacy, and vindictiveness. Geralt did not take up the subject when Ciri fell into dozing once more. This time she was woken by raised voices. Yarpen's voice, to be exact. He was yelling. "Oh yes, so you know. That's what I've decided." "Quieter," said the Witcher calmly. "There's a sick woman in the wagon. Understand, I'm not criticizing your decisions or your resolution." "No, of course not," the dwarf interrupted sarcastically. "You're just smiling knowing about them." "Yarpen, I'm warning you. As one friend to another, both sides despise those who sit on the fence, or at best they treat them with suspicion. I'm not sitting. I'm unambiguously declaring myself to be on one side. But you'll always remain a dwarf for that side, someone who's different, an outsider, while the other side—" He broke off. "Well," growled Yarpen, turning away. "Well, go on. What are you waiting for? Call me a traitor and a dog on a human leash, who, for a handful of silver and a bowl of lousy food, is prepared to be set against his rebelling kinsmen who are fighting for freedom. Well, go on. Spit it out. I don't like insinuations." "No, Yarpen," Geralt said quietly. "No, I'm not going to spit anything out." "Ah, you're not?" The dwarf whipped the horses. "You don't feel like it? You prefer to stare and smile? Not a word to me, eh? But you could say it to Wank. Please don't count on my sword. Oh, so haughtily, nobly, and proud yourself. Shove your haughtiness up your dog's arse, and your bloody pride with it." "I just wanted to be honest. I don't want to get mixed up in this conflict. I want to remain neutral." "It's impossible," yelled Yarpen. "It's impossible to remain neutral. Don't you understand that?" "No, you don't understand anything. Oh, get off my wagon. Get on your horse. Get out of my sight, with your arrogant neutrality. You get on my nerves." Geralt turned away. Ciri held her breath in anticipation, but the Witcher didn't say a word. He stood and jumped from the wagon, swiftly, softly, and nimbly. Yarpen waited for him to untether his mare from the ladder, then whipped his horse once again, growling something incomprehensible, sounding terrifying under his breath. She stood up and jumped down too, to find her chestnut. The dwarf turned and measured her with a reluctant eye. "And you're just a nuisance too, little madam," he snorted angrily. "All we need are ladies and girls, damn it. I can't even take a piss from the box. I have to stop the cart and go into the bushes." Ciri put her hands on her hips, shook her ashen fringe, and turned up her nose. "Is that so?" she trilled, enraged. Drink less beer, Zigrin, and maybe you won't have to. My beer's none of your shittin' business, you chit. Don't yell. Triss has just fallen asleep. It's my wagon. I'll yell if I want to. Stumpy. What? You imperderous brat. Stumpy. I'll show you, Stump. Oh, damn it. The dwarf leaned far back, pulling at the reins at the very last moment, just as the two horses were on the point of stepping over a log blocking their way. Yarpen stood up in the box and, swearing in both human and dwarvish, whistling and roaring, brought the cart to a halt. Dwarves and humans alike leapt from their wagons and ran up and helped lead the horses to the clearer path, tugging them on their halters and harnesses. Dozing off, eh, Yarpen? Growled Polly Delberg as he approached. Bloody hell, if you'd ridden over that, the axle would be done for, and the wheels shattered to hell. Damn it, what were you? Piss off, Polly, roared Yarpen Zigrin, and furiously lashed at the horse's hindquarters with the reins. You were lucky, said Ciri, ever so sweetly, squeezing onto the box next to the dwarf. As you can see, it's better to have a witcher girl in your wagon than travel alone. I warned you just in time, but you'd been in the middle of pissin' from the box and ridden into the log. Well, well, it's scary to think what might have happened. Are you going to be quiet? I'm not saying any more. Not a word. She lasted less than a minute. Zigrin, sir? I'm not a sir. The dwarf nudged her with his elbow and bared his teeth. I'm Yarpen. Is that clear? We'll lead the horses together, right? Right. Can I hold the reins? If you must. Wait, not like that. Pass them over your index finger and hold them down with your thumb, like this. The same with the left. Don't tug them. Don't pull too hard. Is that right? Right. Yarpen? Huh. What does it mean, remain neutral? To be indifferent, he muttered reluctantly. Don't let the reins hang down. Pull the left one closer to yourself. What's indifferent? Indifferent to what? The dwarf leaned far out and spat under the wagon. If the Scoia'tael attack us, your Geralt intends to stand by and look calmly on as they cut our throats. You'll probably stand next to him, because it'll be a demonstration class. Today's subject, the Witcher's behavior in face of conflict between intelligent races. I don't understand. That doesn't surprise me in the least. Is that why you quarreled with him and were angry? Who are the Scoia'tael, anyway? These squirrels. Ciri, Yarpen tousled his beard violently. These aren't matters for the minds of little girls. Aha! Now you're angry at me. I'm not little at all. I heard what the soldiers at the fort said about the squirrels. I saw I saw 2 dead elves, and the knight said they also kill, and that it's not just elves amongst them. There are dwarves too. I know, said Yarpen sourly. And you're a dwarf. There's no doubt about that. So why are you afraid of the squirrels? It seems they only fight humans. It's not so simple as that. He grew solemn. Unfortunately. Ciri stayed silent for a long time, biting her lower lip and wrinkling her nose. Now I know, she said suddenly. The squirrels are fighting for freedom. And although you're a dwarf, you're King Hanselt's special secret servant on a human leash. Yarpen snorted, wiping his nose on his sleeve, and leaned out of the box to check that Wenk had not ridden up too close, but the Commissar was far away, engaged in conversation with Geralt. You've got a pretty good hearing, girl, like a marmot. He grinned broadly. You're also a bit too bright for someone destined to give birth, cook, and spin. You think you know everything, don't you? That's because you're a brat. Don't pull silly faces like that. Or don't pull silly faces. Faces like that don't make you look any older. Just uglier than usual. You've grasped the nature of the Scoia'taels quickly. You like the slogans. You know why you understand them so well. Because the Scoia'taels are brats too. They're little snotheads who don't understand that they're being egged on, that someone's taking advantage of their childish stupidity by feeding them slogans about freedom. But they really are fighting for freedom. Ciri raised her head and gazed at the dwarf with wide open green eyes, like the dryads in the Brocalan woods. Broccolin woods. They kill people because some people are harming them. Because this used to be your country, the dwarves and the elves and those halflings, gnomes, and other. And now there are people here, so the elves, snorted Yarpin. They, to be accurate, happen to be strangers just as much as you humans, although they arrived in white ships a good 1,000 years before you. Now they're competing with each other to offer us friendship. Suddenly, we're all brothers. Now they're grinning and saying, "We kinsmen, we the elder races." But hmm before their arrows used to whistle past our ears when we. So the first on Earth were dwarves. Gnomes, to be honest. As far as this part of the world is concerned, because the world is unimaginably huge, Ciri. I know, I saw a map. You couldn't have. No one's drawn a map like that, and I doubt they will in the near future. No one knows what exists beyond the mountains of fire and the greater sea. El- Even elves, although they claim they know everything. They know shit all, I tell you. Hmm. But now, there are far more people than that there are you. Or there are more people than you. Because you multiply like rabbits. The dwarf ground his teeth. You'd do nothing but screw day in and out, without discrimination, with just anyone and anywhere. And it's enough for your women to just sit on a man's trousers and make their bellies swell. Why have you gone so red, crimson as a poppy? You wanted to know, didn't you? So you've got the honest truth and faithful history of a world where he who shatters the skulls of others most efficiently and swells women's bellies fastest reigns. And it's just as hard to compete with you people in murdering as it is in screwing. Yarpen, Geralt said coldly, riding on Roach. Restrain yourself a little, if you please, with your choice of words. And Ciri, stop playing at being a coachwoman and have care for Triss. Check if she's awake and needs anything. I've been awake for a long time, the magician said weakly from the depths of the wagon, but I didn't want to interrupt this interesting conversation. Don't disturb him, Geralt. I'd like to learn more about the role of screwing in the evolution of society. Can I heat some water? Triss wants to wash. Go ahead, agreed Yarpen Zigrin. Xavier, take the spit off the fire. Our hair's had enough. Hand me the cauldron, Ciri. Oh, look at you. It's full to the brim. Did you lug this great weight from the stream by yourself? I'm strong. The elder of the Dahlberg brothers burst out laughing. Don't judge her by appearances, Polly, said Yarpen seriously, as he skillfully divided the roasted gray hair into portions. There's nothing to laugh at here. She's skinny, but I can see she's a robust and resilient lass. She's like a leather belt, thin, but it can't be torn apart in your hands. And if you were to hang yourself on it, it would bear your weight too. No one laughed. Ciri squatted next to the dwarves sprawled around the fire. This time Yarpen Zigrin and his 4 boys had lit their own fire at the camp because they did not intend to share the hare which Xavier Morin had shot. For them alone there was just enough for one, and most 2 mouthfuls each. Add some wood to the fire, said Yarpen, licking his fingers. The water will heat quicker. The water's a stupid idea, stated Regan Dahlberg, spitting out the bone. Washing can only harm you when you're sick. When you're healthy, too, come at that. You remember old Schreider? His wife once told him to wash, and Schrader went and died soon afterwards, 'cause a rabid dog bit him. If he hadn't washed, the dog wouldn't have bit him. I think, said Ciri, checking the temperature of the water in the cauldron with her finger. It's excessive to wash every day, too. But Triss asked for it. She's even crying once. So Geralt and I, we know, the elder Dahlberg nodded. But that Witcher should. I'm constantly amazed. Hey, Zigrim. If you had a woman, would you wash her and comb her hair? Would you carry her to the bushes if she had to? Shut up, Polly, Yarpin cut him short. Don't see anything against that Witcher, because he's a good fellow. Am I saying anything? I'm only surprised. Triss, Siri butted in cheekily, is not his woman. I'm all the more surprised. You're all the more a blockhead, you mean, Yarpin summoned up. Siri, pour a bit of water in to boil. We'll infuse some more saffron and poppy seeds for the magician. She felt better today, eh? Probably did, murmured Yannick Brass. We only had to stop the convoy 6 times for her. I know it wouldn't do to deny aid on the trail, and he's a prick who thinks otherwise. And he who denies it would be an arch prick and base son of a bitch. But we've been in these damn woods too long, far too long, I tell you. We're tempting fate, damn it. We're tempting fate too much, boys. It's not safe here. The Scoia'tael. Spit that word out, Yannick. Tu, tu, Yarpin. Fighting doesn't frighten me, and a bit of blood nothing new, but if it comes to fighting our own, damn it, why did this happen to us? This frickin' load ought to be transported by 100 frickin' cavalrymen, not us. The devil take those know-it-alls from Ard Carrig. May they shut up, I said, and pass me the pot of kasha. The hare was a snack, damn it. Now we have to eat something. Siri, will you eat with us? Of course. For a long while all that could be heard was the smacking of lips, munching, and the crunch of wooden spoons hitting the pot. Pox on it, said Pauline Dahlberg, and gave a long burp. I could still eat some more. Me too, declared Siri, and burped too, delighted by the dwarf's unpretentious manners. As long as it's not kasha, said Xavier Morin. I can't stomach those milled oats any more. I've gone off salted meat too. So gorge yourself on grass, if you've got such delicate taste buds. Or rip the bark off birch with your teeth. Beavers do it and survive. A beaver. Now that's something I could eat. As for me, a fish. Polly lost himself in dreams as he crunched on a husk pulled from his beard. I've a fancy for a fish, I can tell you. So let's catch some fish. Where? Growled Yannick Brass. In the bushes? In the stream. Some stream. You can piss to the other side. What sort of fish could there be? There are fish. Siri licked her spoon clean and slipped it into the top of her boot. I saw them when I went to the river, but they're sick or something, those fish. They've got a rash, black and red spots. Trout, roared Polly, spitting crumbs of husk. Well, boys, to the stream double quick. Regan, get your breeches down. We'll turn them into fishing tart. Why mine? Pull them off, at the double, or I'll wallop you, snot-head. Didn't mother say you have to listen to me? Hurry up if you want to go fishing, 'cause dusk is just round the corner, said Yarpin. Siri, is the water hot yet? Leave it, leave it. You'll burn yourself and get dirty from the cauldron. I know you're strong, but let me. I'll carry it. Geralt was already waiting for them. They could see his white hair through the gap in the canvas, covering the wagon from afar. The dwarf poured the water into the bucket. Need any help, Witcher? No, thank you, Yarpin. Siri will help. Triss was no longer running a high temperature, but she was extremely weak. Geralt and Ciri were, by now, efficient at undressing and washing her. They had also learned to temper her ambitious, but, at present, unrealistic attempts to manage on her own. They coped exceptionally well. He supported the enchantress in his arms. Ciri washed and dried her. Only one thing had started to surprise and annoy Ciri. Triss, in her opinion, snuggled up to Geralt too tightly. This time she was even trying to kiss him. Geralt indicated the magician's saddlebags with his head. Ciri understood immediately, because this too was part of the ritual. Triss always demanded to have her hair combed. She found the comb and knelt down beside her. Triss lowered her head toward her, put her arms around the Witcher. In Ciri's opinion, definitely a little too tightly. Oh, Geralt, she sobbed, I so regret what was between us. Triss, please. It should have happened. Now. When I'm better, it would be entirely different. I could, I could even, Triss, I envy Yennefer. I envy her you. Ciri, step out. But go, please. She jumped out of the wagon and went straight into Yarpen, who was waiting, leaning against the wheel and pensively chewing a blade of grass. The dwarf put his arm around her. He did not need to lean her over to do so, as Geralt did. He was no taller than her. Never make the same mistake, little Witcher girl, he murmured, indicating the wagon with his eyes. If someone shows you compassion, sympathy, and dedication, if they surprise you with integrity of character, value it, but don't mistake it for something else. It's not nice to eavesdrop. I know, and it's dangerous. I only just managed to jump aside when you threw out the suds from the bucket. Come on, let's go see how many trout have jumped into Regan's breeches. Yarpen? Huh. I like you. And I like you, kid. But you're a dwarf, and I'm not. And what diff... Ah, the scoia'tael. You're thinking about the squirrels, aren't you? It's not giving you any peace, is it? Ciri freed herself from his heavy arm. Nor you, she said. Nor any of the others. I can plainly see that. The dwarf said nothing. Yarpen? Yes. Who's right? The squirrels or you? Geralt wants to be neutral. You serve King Henselt, even though you're a dwarf. And the knight at the fort shouted that everybody's our enemy, and that everybody's got to be everyone, even the children. Why, Yarpen? Who's right? I don't know, said the dwarf with some effort. I'm not omniscient. I'm doing what I think right. The squirrels have taken up their weapons and gone into the woods. Humans to the sea. They're shouting, not realizing that their catchy slogan was fed to them by Nilfgaardian emissaries, not understanding that the slogan is not aimed at them, but plainly at humans, and it's meant to ignite human hatred, not fire young elves to battle. I understood. That's why I consider the Scoia'tael's action criminally stupid. What to do? Maybe in a few years' time I'll be called a traitor who sold out, and they'll be heroes. Our history, the history of our world, has seen events turn out like that. He felt silent. He fell silent, ruffled his beard. Ciri also remained silent. Ellarina, he muttered suddenly. If Ellarina was a hero, if what she did is heroism. Thank you, Tiger. If what she did is heroism, then that's just too bad. Let them call me a traitor and a coward, because I, Yarpen Zigrin, coward, traitor, and renegade, state that we should not kill each other. I state that we ought to live. Live in such a way that we don't, later, have to ask anyone for forgiveness. The heroic Ellarina, she had to ask. Forgive me. She begged, forgive me. To hell with that. It's better to die than to live in the knowledge that you've done something that needs forgiveness. Again, he fell quiet. Ciri did not ask the questions pressing to her lips. She instinctively felt she should not. We have to live next to each other, Yarpen continued. We and you humans. Because we simply don't have any other option. We've known this for 200 years, and we've been working toward it for over 1,000. You want to know why I entered King Henselt's service? Why I made such a decision? I can't allow all the work to go to waste. For over 100 years, we've been trying to come to terms with the humans. The halflings, gnomes, us, even the elves. I'm not talking about russalks, nymphs, and sylphs. They've always been savages, even when you weren't here. Damn it all, it took 100 years, but somehow or other, we managed to live a common life next to each other together. We managed to partially convince humans that we're not so very different. We're not different at all, Yarpen. Dwarf turned abruptly. We're not different at all, repeated Ciri. After all, you think and feel like Geralt, and like I do. We eat the same things from the same pot. You help Triss, and so do I. You had a grandmother and I had a grandmother. My grandmother was killed by the Nilfgaardians in Sintra, and mine by the humans, the dwarf said with some effort, in Brunj, during the pogrom. Riders! Shouted one of Wennick's advance guards. Riders ahead! The commissar trotted up to Yarpin's wagon, and Geralt approached from the other side. Get in the back, Ciri, he said brusquely. Get off the box and get in the back. Stay with Triss. I can't see anything from there. Don't argue, growled Yarpin. Scuttle back there and be quick about it, and hand me the mardle. It's under the sheepskin. This? Ciri held up a heavy, nasty-looking object, like a hammer with a sharp, slightly curved hook at its head. That's it, confirmed the dwarf. He slipped the handle to the top of his boot and laid the axe on his knees. Wenk seemed calm, watched the highway while sheltering his eyes with his hand. Light cavalry from Ban Glean, he surmised after a while. The so-called Dun Banner. I recognize them by their cloaks and beaver hats. Remain calm. Stay sharp. Cloaks and beaver hats can be pretty quick to change owners. The riders approached swiftly. There were about 10 of them. Ciri saw Polly Dahlberg in the wagon behind her, place 2 readied crossbows on his knee, and Regan cover them with a cloak. Ciri crept stealthily out from under the canvas, hiding behind Yarpin's broad back. Triss tried to raise herself, swore, and collapsed against her bedding. Halt! Shouted the first of the riders, no doubt their leader. Who are you? From whence and to where do you ride? Who asks? Wenk calmly pulled himself upright in the saddle. And on whose authority? King Hensalt's army, inquisitive sir. Lance Corporal Zyvik asks, and he is unused to asking twice, so answer at the double. Who are you? Quartermaster's service of the King's army. Anyone could claim that. I see no one here bearing the King's colors. Come closer, Lance Corporal, and examine this ring. Why flash a ring at me? The soldier grimaced. Am I supposed to know every ring or something? Anyone could have a ring like that. Some significant sign. Yarpen Zigrin stood up in the box, raised his axe with a swift movement, and pushed it under the soldier's nose. And this sign? He snarled. You know it. Smell it, and remember how it smells. The lance corporal yanked the reins and turned his horse. Threaten me, do you? He roared. Me? I'm the King's service. And so are we, said Went quietly. We have been for longer than you, at that, I'm sure. I warn you, trooper, don't overdo it. I'm on guard here. How am I to know who you are? You saw the ring, drawled the commissar. And if you didn't recognize the sign on the jewel, then I wonder who you are. The colors of your unit bear the same emblem, so you ought to know it. The soldier clearly restrained himself, influenced, no doubt, equally by Wenk's calm words and serious, determined faces peering from the escort's carts. He said, shifting his fur hat forward or towards his left ear. Fine. But if you truly are who you claim to be, you will not, I trust, have anything against my having a look to see what you carry in the wagons. We will indeed, Wenk frowned, and very much at that. Our load is not your business, Lance Corporal. Besides, I do not understand what you think you may find there. You do not understand, the soldier nodded, lowering his hand toward the hilt of his sword. So I shall tell you, sir. Human trafficking is forbidden, and there is no lack of scoundrels selling slaves to the Nilfgaardians. If I find humans in stocks in your wagons, you will not convince me that you are the King's service, even if you were to show me a dozen rings. Fine, said Wenk dryly. If it is slaves you are looking for, then look. You have my permission. The soldier cantered to the wagon in the middle, leaned over from the saddle, and raised the canvas. What's in those barrels? What's in those barrels? What do you expect? Prisoners? Sneered Yannick Brass, sprawled in the coachman's box. I am asking you what's in them, so answer me. Salt fish. And in those trunks there? The warrior rode up to the next wagon and kicked the side. Hooves, snapped Polly Delberg, and there in the back are buffalo skins. So I see. The lance corporal waved his hand, smacked his lips at the horse, rode up to the vanguard, and peered into Yarpin's wagon. And who is the woman lying here? Tris Marigold smiled weakly. Good to hear. Raised herself to her elbow, and traced a short, complicated sign with her hand. Who am I? She asked in a quiet voice. But you can't see me at all. The soldier winked nervously, shuddering slightly. Salt fish, he said, convinced, lowering the canvas. All is in order. And this child? Dried mushrooms, said Siri, looking at him impudently. The soldier fell silent, frozen with his mouth open. What's that? He asked after a while, frowning. What? Have you concluded your inspection, warrior? Wenk showed cool interest as he rode up on the other side of the cart. The soldier could barely look away from Siri's green eyes. I have concluded it. Drive on. And may the gods guide you. But be on your guard. 2 days ago, the Scoia'tael wiped out an entire mounted patrol up by Badger Ravine. It was a strong, large command. It's true that Badger Ravine is far from here, but elves travel through the forest faster than the wind. We were ordered to round them up. But how do you catch an elf? It's like trying to catch the wind. Good enough. We're not interested, the commissar interrupted him briskly. Time presses, and we still have a long journey ahead of us. Fare you well, then. Hey, follow me. You heard Geralt, snarled Yarpen Zigrin. Watching the patrol ride away. There are bloody squirrels in the vicinity. I felt it. I've got this tingling feeling in my back all the time, as if some archer were already aiming at me. No, damn it, we can't travel blindly as we've been doing until now, whistling away, dozing, and sleepily farting. We have to know what lies ahead of us. Listen, I've an idea. Siri pulled her chestnut up sharply, and then launched into a gallop, leaning low in the saddle. Geralt, engrossed in conversation with Wank, suddenly sat up straight. Don't run wild, he called. No madness, girl. Do you want to break your neck? And don't go too far. She heard no more. She had torn ahead too fiercely. She had done it on purpose, not wanting to listen to the daily cautions. Not too quickly, not too fiercely. Siri, pa pa. Don't go too far, pa pa pa. Listen careful, pa pa. Exactly as if I were a child, she thought. I'm almost 13 and have a swift chestnut beneath me and a sharp sword across my back, and I'm not afraid of anything. And it's spring. Hey, careful, you'll burn your backside. Yarpen Zigrin, another know-it-all, pa pa. Farther, farther, at a gallop, along the bumpy path, through the green, green grasses and bushes, through the silver puddles, through the damp, golden sand, through the feathery ferns. A frightened fallow deer disappeared into the woods, flashing the black and white lantern of its tail and rump as it skipped away. Birds soared from the trees, colorful jays and bee-eaters, screaming black magpies with their funny tails. Water splashed beneath her horse's hooves and in the puddles of the clefts. Further, even further, the horse, which had been trudging sluggishly behind the wagon for too long, carried her joyously and briskly, happy to be allowed speed. It ran fluidly, muscles playing between her thighs, damp mane thrashing her face. The horse extended its neck as Siri gave it free rein. Farther, dear horse, don't feel the bit. Farther, at the gallop, sharp, sharp. Spring. She shoved and glanced back, or she slowed and glanced back. There, alone at last, far away at last. No one was going to tell her off any more, remind her of something, demand her attention, threaten that this would be the end of such rides. Alone at last, free, at ease and independent. Slower. A light trot. After all, this wasn't just a fun ride. She also had responsibilities. Siri was, after all, a mounted foray now, a patrol, an advanced guard. Ha, she thought, looking around. The safety of the entire convoy depends on me now. They're all waiting impatiently for me to return and report. The way is clear and passable. I didn't see anyone. There are no traces of wheels or hooves. I'll report it, and thin Master Wank, with his cold blue eyes, will nod his head gravely. Yarpen Zigrin will bare his yellow horse teeth. Pauline Dahlberg will shout, "Well done, little one," and Geralt will smile faintly. He'll smile, although he very rarely smiles recently. Ciri looked around and took a mental note. 2 felled birches. No problem. A heap of branches. Nothing the wagons couldn't pass. A cleft out by the rain. A small obstacle with wheels of the first wagon will run over it. The others will follow in the ruts. A huge clearing, a good place for rest. Traces? What traces can there be? Here. There's no one here. There's the forest. There are birds screeching amidst the fresh green leaves. A red fox runs leisurely across the path, and everything smells of spring. The track broke off halfway up the hill, disappearing in the sandy ravine, wound through the crooked pines which clung to the slopes. Ciri abandoned the path and, wanting to scrutinize the area from a height, climbed the steep slope, and so she could touch the wet, sweet-smelling leaves. She dismounted, threw the reins over a snag in a tree, and slowly strolled among the junipers which covered the hill. On the other side of the hill was an open space, gaping in the thick of the forest like a hole bitten out of the trees, left, no doubt, after a fire which had raged here a very long time ago, for there was no sign of blackened or charred remains. Everywhere was green with low birches and little fir trees. The trail, as far as the eye could see, seemed clear and passable, and safe. What are they afraid of, she thought. The Scoia'tael? But what was there to be afraid of? I'm not afraid of elves. I haven't done anything to them. Elves. The squirrels. Scoia'tael. Before Geralt had ordered her to leave, Ciri had managed to take a look at the corpses of the fort. She remembered one in particular, his face covered by hair stuck together with darkened blood, his neck unnaturally twisted and bent, pulled back in a ghastly set grimace. His upper lip revealed teeth, very white and very tiny, non-human. She remembered the elf's boots, ruined and reaching up to the knees, laced at the bottom and fastened at the top with many wrought buckles. Elves who kill humans and die in battles themselves. Geralt says you have to remain neutral, yet Yarpen says you have to behave in such a way that you don't have to ask for forgiveness. Who and whom and what should one forgive? She kicked a molehill and, lost in thought, dug her heel into the sand. The squirrels kill humans, and Nilfgaard pays them for it, uses them, incites them. Nilfgaard. Ciri had not forgotten, although she very much wanted to forget. What had happened in Cintra? The watching, the despair, the fear, the hunger, and the pain, the apathy and torpor, which came later, much later, when the druids from Transriver had found her and taken her in. She remembered it all uh, as through a mist, and wanted to stop remembering it. But it came back in her thoughts, into her dreams. Cintra, the thudding of hooves, the thuttering of horses and savage cries, corpses, flames, and the black night in his winged helmet, and later, cottages in Trans River, a flame blackened chimney, almost charred ruins. Next to it, by an unscathed well, a black cat licking a terrible burn on its side, a well, a sweep, a bucket full of blood. Siri wiped her face, looked down at her hand, taken aback. Her palm was wet. The girl sniffed and wiped the tears with her sleeve. Neutrality? Indifference? She wanted to scream. A witcher looking on indifferently? No. A witcher has to defend people. From the leshy, the vampire, the werewolf. And not only from them. He has to defend people from every evil. And in Trans River, I saw what evil was. A witcher has to defend and save. To defend man so that they aren't hung on trees by their hands, aren't impaled and left to die. To defend fair girls from being spread-eagled between stakes rammed into the ground. Defend children so they aren't slaughtered and thrown into a well. Even a cat burned alive in a torched barn deserves to be defended. That's why I'm going to become a witcher. That's why I've got a sword. To defend people like those in Sodden and Trans River. Because they don't have swords. They don't know the steps, the half-turns, dodges, and pirouettes. No one has taught them how to fight. They're defenseless and helpless in the face of the werewolf and the Nilfgaardian marauder. They teach me to fight so that I can defend the helpless, and that's what I'm going to do. Never will I be neutral. Never will I be indifferent. Never. She didn't know what warned her, whether it was the sudden silence which fell over the forest like a cold shadow, or a movement caught out of the corner of her eye, but she reacted in a flash, instinctively, with a reaction she had learnt in the woods of Trans River when, escaping from Sintra, she had raced against death. She fell to the ground, crawled under a juniper bush, and froze, motionless. Just let the horse not neigh, she thought. On the other side of the ravine something moved again. She saw a silhouette show faintly, hazily, amidst the leaves. An elf peered cautiously from the thicket, having thrown the hood from his head. He looked around for a moment, pricked up his ears, and then, noiselessly and swiftly, moved along the river. After him, two more leaped out, and then others moved, many of them, in single file. About half were on horseback. These rode slowly, straight in their saddles, focused and alert. For a moment she saw them all clearly and precisely as, in utter silence, they flowed across the bright breach in the wall of trees, framed against the background of the sky, before they disappeared, dissolved like a shimmering shadows of the wild forest. They vanished without a rustle or a sound, like ghosts. No horse tapped its hoof or snorted. No branch cracked under foot or hoof. The weapons slung across them did not clang. They disappeared, but Siri did not move. She lay flat on the ground under the juniper bush, trying to breathe as quickly as possible. She knew that a frightened bird or animal could give her away, and a bird or animal could be frightened by any sound or movement, even the slightest, the most careful. She got up only when the woods had grown perfectly calm and the magpies chattered again amongst the trees where the elves had disappeared. She rose only to find herself in a strong grip. A black leather glove fell across her mouth, muffled her scream of fear. Be quiet, Geralt. Quiet, I said. You saw them. I did. It's them, she whispered. The Scoia'tael, isn't it? Yes. Quick, back to the horses. Watch your feet. They rode carefully and silently down the slope without returning to the trail. They remained in the thicket. Geralt looked around, alert. He did not allow her to ride independently. He did not give her the chestnut's reins. He led the horse himself. Ciri, he said suddenly, not a word about what we saw. Not to Yarpen, not to Wank, not to anyone. Understand? No, she grunted, lowering her head. I don't understand. Why shouldn't I say anything? They have to be worn. Whose side are we on, Geralt? Whose side are we against? Who's our friend? Who's our enemy? We'll part with the convoy tomorrow, he said after a moment's silence. Triss is almost recovered. We'll say goodbye and go our own way. We have problems of our own worries, and our own difficulties. Then, I hope, you'll finally stop dividing the inhabitants of this world into friends and enemies. We're to be neutral, indifferent, is that right? And if they attack, they won't. And if, listen to me, he turned to her, why do you think that such a vital load of gold and silver, King Henselt's secret aid for Erden, is being escorted by dwarves and not humans? I saw an elf watching us from a tree yesterday. I heard them pass by our camp during the night. The Scoia'tael will not attack dwarves, Ciri. But they're here, she muttered. They are. They're moving around, surrounding us. I know why they're here. I'll show you. He turned the horse abruptly and threw the reins to her. She kicked the chestnut with her heels and moved away faster, but he motioned for her to stay behind him. They cut across the trail and re-entered the wild forest. The Witcher led, Ciri following in his tracks, neither saying anything. Not for a long time. Look, Geralt held back his horse. Look, Ciri. What is it? She asked. Sherwood. In front of them, as far as the woods allowed them to see, rose smoothly hewn blocks of granite and marble in blunt corners, worn away by the winds, decorated by patterns long leached out by the rains, cracked and shattered by frost, split by tree roots. Amongst the trunks, broken columns flashed white arcades, the remnants of ornamental phrases entwined with ivy and wrapped in a thick layer of green moss. This was a castle, a palace, and elves didn't build castles. Dismount. The horses won't manage in the rubble. Who destroyed it all? Humans? No, they did, before they left. Why? They knew they wouldn't be coming back. It happened following their second clash with the humans, more than 200 years ago. Before that, they used to leave towns untouched when they retreated. Humans used to build on the foundations left by elves. That's how Novigrad, Oxenfurt, Wyzima, Tredogor, Maribor, and Sidaris were built. And Sintra. Sintra? He confirmed it with a nod of his head, not taking his eyes off the ruins. They left, whispered Ciri. But now they're coming back? Why? To have a look. At what? Without a word, he laid his hand on her shoulder and pushed her gently before him. They jumped down the marble stairs, climbing down, holding onto the springy hazel, clusters of which had burst through every gap, every crevice in the moss-covered cracked plates. This was the center of the palace, its heart, a fountain. Here? She asked, surprised, gazing at the dense thicket of alders and white birch trunks amongst the misshapen blocks and slabs. Here? But there's nothing here. Come. The stream feeding the fountain must have changed its course many times, patiently and consistently washing the marble blocks and alabaster plates which had sunk or fallen to form dams, once again changing the course of the current. As a result, the whole area was divided up by shallow gullies. Here and there the water cascaded over the remains of the building, washing it clean of leaves, sand, and litter. In these palaces, the marble terracotta which mosaics were still as vibrant, with color as fresh as if they had been laying there for 3 days, not 2 centuries. Geralt leapt across the stream and went in amongst what remained of the columns. Ciri followed. They jumped off the ruined stair and, lowering their heads, walked beneath the untouched arch of the arcade, half buried beneath a mound of earth. The Witcher stopped and indicated with his hand Siri sighed loudly. From rubble, colorful with smashed terracotta, grew an enormous rose bush covered with beautiful white lilied flowers. Drops of dew as bright as silver glistened on the petals. The bush wove its shoots around a large slab of white stone, and from it a sad, pretty face looked out at them. The downpours of snows had not yet managed to blur or wash away its delicate and noble features. It was a face which the chisels of plunderers digging out gold ornaments, mosaics, and precious stones from the relief sculpture had not managed to disfigure. Aelirin, said Geralt after a long pause. She's beautiful, whispered Ciri, grabbing him by the hand. The Witcher didn't seem to notice. He stared at the sculpture that was far away in a different world and time. Aelirin, he repeated after a time, known as Ilir- Illyrina by the dwarves and humans. She led them into battle 200 years ago. The elders of the Elves were against it. They knew they had no chance, that they would not be able to pick themselves up after the defeat. They wanted to save their people, wanted to survive. They decided to destroy their towns and retreat to the inaccessible wild mountains. And to wait. Elves live a long time, Ciri. By our time scale, they were almost eternal. They thought humans were something that would pass, like a drought, like a heavy winter or a plague of locusts, after which comes rain, spring, and new harvest. They wanted to sit it out, survive. They wanted to destroy their towns and palaces, amongst them their pride, the beautiful Sherwood. They wanted to weather out the storm, but Ellerina, Ellerina stirred up the young. They took up arms and followed her into their last desperate battle, and they were massacred, mercilessly massacred. Ciri did not say anything, staring at the beautiful, still face. They died with her name on their lips, the Witcher continued quietly, repeating her challenge, her cry. They died for Sherwood, because Sherwood was a symbol. They died for this stone and marble, for Aelirin. Just like she promised them, they died with dignity, heroically and honorably. They saved their honor, but they brought nothing but ruin as a result, condemned their own race to annihilation, their own people. You remember what Yarpen told you? Those who rule the world and those who die out? He explained it to you coarsely, but truly. Elves live a long time, but only their youngsters are fertile. Only the young can have offspring, and practically all the elven youngsters had followed Ellerin, Ellerina. They followed Aelirin, the white rose of Sherwood. We are standing in the ruins of her palace, by the fountain whose waters she listened to in the evenings. And these are her flowers. Ciri was silent. Geralt drew her to himself, put his arm around her. Do you know now why the Scoia'tael were here? Do you see what they wanted to look at? And do you understand why the elven and dwarven young must not be allowed to be massacred once again? Do you understand why neither you nor I are permitted to have a hand in this massacre? These rose flowers all year round. They ought to have grown wild by now, but they are more beautiful than any rose in a tended garden. Elves continue to come to Sherwood, Ciri. A variety of elves, the impetuous and the foolish ones, for whom the cracked stone is a symbol, as well as the sensible ones, for whom these immortal, forever reborn flowers are a symbol. Elves who understand that if this bush is torn from the ground, and the earth is burnt out, the roses of Sherwood will never flower again. Do you understand? She nodded. Do you understand that this neutrality is, which stirs you so? To be neutral does not mean to be indifferent or insensitive. You don't have to kill your feelings. It's enough to kill hatred within yourself. Do you understand? Yes, she whispered. I understand, Geralt. I I'd like to take one of the roses, to remind me. May I? Do, he said after some hesitation. Do, in order to remember. Let's go now. Let's return to the convoy. Ciri pinned a rose under the lacing of her jerkin. Suddenly she cried out quietly, lifting her hand. A trickle of blood ran from her finger down her palm. Did you prick yourself? Yarpen, whispered the girl, looking at the blood filling her lifeline. Wenk. Polly. What? Triss! She shouted with a piercing voice which was not hers, suddenly, fiercely, and wiped her face with her arm. Quick, Geralt. We've got to help. To the horses, Geralt. Ciri, what's happening? They're dying. She galloped with her ear almost touching the horse's neck, and spurred her mount on, kicking with her heels and shouting. The sand of the forest path flew beneath the hoofs. She heard screaming from the distance, and smelt smoke. Coming straight at them, blocking the path, raced two horses dragging a harness, reins, and a broken shaft behind them. Ciri did not hold her chestnut back, and shot past them at full speed, flakes of froth skimming across her face. Behind her she heard Roach neigh and Geralt's curse as he was forced to halt. She tore around a bend in the path into a large glade. The convoy was in flames. From thickets, flaming arrows flew toward the wagons, like fire-birds, perforating the canvas and digging into the boards. The Scoia'tael attacked with war cries and yells. Ciri, ignoring Geralt's shouts from behind her, directed her horse straight at the first two wagons brought to the fore. One was lying on its side, and Yarpen Zigrin, axe in one hand, crossbow in the other, stood next to it. At his feet, motionless, with her blue dress hitched halfway up her thighs, lay Triss! Ciri straightened the saddle, thumping her horse with her heels. The Scoia'tael turned toward her, and arrows whistled past the girl's ears. She shook her head without slowing her gallop. She heard Geralt shout, ordering her to flee into the woods. She did not intend to obey. She leaned down and bolted straight toward the archers shooting at her. Suddenly she smelt the overpowering scent of the white rose pinned to her jerkin. Triss! The elves leapt out of the way of the speeding horses. Ciri caught one lightly with her stirrup. She heard a sharp buzz. Her steed struggled, whinnied, and threw itself to the side. Ciri saw an arrow dug deep just below the withers, right by her thigh. She tore her feet from the stirrups, jumped up, squatted in the saddle, bouncing off strongly, and leapt. She fell softly on the body of an overturned wagon, using her hands to balance herself, and jumping again, landing with the bent knees next to Yarpen, who was roaring and brandishing his axe. Next to them, on the second wagon, Polly Dahlberg was fighting while Regan, leaning back and bracing his legs against the board, was struggling to hold on to the harnessed horses. They neighed wildly, stamping their hoofs, and yanked at the shaft in fear of the fire devouring the canvas. She rushed to Triss, who lay amongst the scattered barrels and chests, grabbed her by her clothes, and started to drag her toward the overturned wagon. The enchantress moaned, holding her head just above the ear. Right by Ciri's side, hooves suddenly clattered and horses snorted. Two elves, brandishing their swords, were pressing the madly fighting Yarpen hard. The dwarf spun like a top and agilely deflected the blows directed against him with his axe. Ciri heard curses, grunts, and whining clash of metal. Another span of horses detached itself from the flaming convoy and rushed toward them, dragging smoke and flames behind it and scattering burning rags. The wagon man hung inertly from the box, and Yannick Brass stood next to him, barely keeping his balance. With one hand he wielded the reins, With the other he was cutting himself away from the two elves galloping, one at each side of the wagon. A third scoia'tael, keeping up with the harnessed horses, was shooting arrows after arrow into their sides. "Jump!" yelled Yarpen, shouting over the noise. "Jump, Yannick!" Ciri saw Geralt catch up with the speeding wagon, and with a short, spare slash of his sword swipe one of the elves from his saddle, while Wenk, riding up on the opposite side, hewed at the other, the elf shooting the horses. Yannick threw the reins down and jumped off, straight under the third scoia'tael's horse. The elf stood in his stirrups and slashed at him with his sword. The dwarf fell. At that moment the flaming wagon crashed into those still fighting, parting and scattering them. Ciri barely managed to pull Triss out from beneath the crazed horse's hooves at the last moment. The swinging tree tore away at the crack, or with a crack. The wagon leapt into the air, lost a wheel, and overturned, scattering its load and smoldering boards everywhere. Ciri dragged the enchantress under Yarpen's overturned wagon. Polly Delberg, who suddenly found himself next to her, helped, while Geralt covered them both, shoving Roach between them and the charging scoia'tael. All around the wagon battle seethed. Ciri heard shouting, blades clashing, horses snorting, hooves clattering. Yarpen, Wenk, and Geralt, surrounded on all sides by the elves, fought like raging demons. The fighters were suddenly parted by Regan's span as he struggled in the coachman's box, with a halfway wearing a lynx fur hat. The halfling was sitting on Regan, trying to jab him with a long knife. Yarpen deftly leapt onto the wagon, caught the halfling by the neck, and kicked him overboard. Regan gave a piercing yell, grabbed the reins, and lashed the horses. The span jerked, the wagon rolled, and gathering speed in a flash. "Circle, Regan!" roared Yarpen. "Circle! Go round!" The wagon turned and descended on the elves again, parting them. One of them sprung up, grabbed the right lead horse by the halter, and couldn't stop him. The impetus threw him under the hooves and wheels. Ciri heard an excruciating scream. Another elf, galloping next to them, gave the backhand swipe with the sword. Yarpen ducked. The blade rang against the hoop, supporting the canvas, and the momentum carrying the elf forward. The dwarf hunched abruptly and vigorously swung his arm. The scoia'tael yelled, stiffened in the saddle, and tumbled to the ground. A martel protruded between his shoulder blades. "Come on then, you whoresons," Yarpen roared, whirling his axe. "Who else? Chase a circle, Regan. Go round." Regan tossed his blooded mane of hair, hunched in the box amidst the whizzing of arrows, howled like the damned, and mercilessly lashed the horses on. The span dashed in a tight circle, creating a moving barricade, belching flames and smoke around the overturned wagon, beneath which Ciri had dragged the semi-conscious, battered magician. Not far from them danced Wennick's horse, a mouse-colored stallion. Wennick was hunched over. Ciri saw the white feathers of an arrow sticking out of his side. Despite the wound, he was skillfully hacking his way past two elves on foot, attacking him from both sides. As Ciri watched another arrow strike him in the back, the commissar collapsed forward onto his horse's neck, but remained in the saddle. Polly Delberg rushed to his aid. Ciri was left alone. She reached for her sword, the blade which, throughout her training, had leapt out from her back in a flash, would not let itself be drawn for anything. It resisted her, stuck in its scabbard as if glued in tar. Amongst the whirl seething around her, amongst moves so swift that they blurred in front of her eyes, her sword seemed strangely Her sword seemed strangely, unnaturally slow. It seemed ages would pass before it would be fully drawn. The ground trembled and shook. Siri suddenly realized that it was not the ground. It was her knees. Polly Dahlberg, keeping the elf charging at him at bay with his axe, dragged the wounded Wennick along the ground. Roach flitted past beside the wagon, and Geralt threw himself at the elf. He had lost his headband, and his hair streamed out behind him with his speed. Swords clashed. Another scoia'tael on foot leapt out from behind the wagon. Polly abandoned Wenk, pulled himself upright, and brandished his axe, then froze. In front of him stood a dwarf, wearing a hat adorned with a squirrel's tail, his black beard braided into two plaits. Polly hesitated. The black beard did not hesitate for a second. He struck with both arms. The blade of the axe whirled and fell, slicing into the collarbone with a hideous crunch. Polly fell instantly, without a moan. It looked as if the force of the blow had broken both his knees. Ciri screamed. Yarpen Zigern leapt from the wagon. The black-bearded dwarf spun and cut. Yarpen avoided the blow with an agile, half-turn dodge, grunted, and struck ferociously, chopping into the Blackbeard, throat, jaw, and face, right up to the nose. The scoia'tael bent back and collapsed, bleeding, pounding his hands against the ground and tearing at the earth with his heels. "Geralt!" screamed Ciri, feeling something move behind her, sensing death behind her. There was only a hazy shape, caught in a turn, a move and a flash, but the girl, like lightning, reacted with a diagonal parry and feint taught her in Kaer Morhen. She caught the blow, but had not been standing firmly enough, had been leaning too far to the side to receive the full force. The strength of the strike threw her against the body of the wagon. Her sword slipped from her hand. The beautiful, long-legged elf, wearing high boots, standing in front of her, grimaced fiercely and, tossing her hair free from her lowered hood, raised her sword. The sword flashed blindingly. The bracelets on the squirrel's wrists glittered. Ciri was in no state to move. But the sword did not fall, did not strike, because the elf was not looking at Ciri, but at the white rose pinned to her jerkin. "Aelirin!" shouted the squirrel loudly, as if waiting to shatter her hesitation with the cry. But she was too late. Geralt, shoving Ciri away, slashed her broadly across the chest with his sword. Blood spurted over the girl's face and clothes. Red droplets spattered on the white petals of the rose. "Aelirin!" muttered the elf shrilly, collapsing to her knees. Before she fell on her face, she managed to shout one more time, loudly, lengthily, despairingly, "Share wed." Reality returned just as suddenly as it had disappeared. Through the monotonous, dull hum which filled her ears, Ciri began to hear voices. Through the flickering, wet curtain of tears, she began to see the living and the dead. "Ciri," whispered Geralt, who was kneeling next to her. "Wake up." "A battle," she moaned, sitting up. "Geralt, what—" "It's all over, thanks to the troops from the Ban Glen, which came to our aid. You weren't—" she whispered, closing her eyes. "You weren't neutral." "No, I wasn't. But you're alive. Triss is alive." "How is she?" "She hit her head falling out of the wagon when Yarpen tried to rescue it, but she's fine now, treating the wounded." Ciri cast her eyes around. Amidst the smoke from the last wagon burning out, silhouettes of armed men flickered, and all around lay chests and barrels. Some of them were shattered, and the contents scattered. They had contained ordinary gray field stones. She stared at them, astounded. "Aid for Demawend from Eredin." Sharpened Zigrin, standing nearby, ground his teeth. "Secret and exceptionally important aid. A convoy of special significance." It was a trap? The dwarf turned, looked at her, at Geralt. Then he looked back at the stones pouring from the barrels and spat. "Yes," he confirmed. "A trap." "The squirrels?" "No." The dead were arranged in a neat row. They lay next to each other, not divided. Elves, humans, and dwarves. Yannick Brass was amongst them. The dark-haired elf in the high boots was there, and the dwarf with his black plaited beard glistened with dry blood. And next to them, "Polly!" sobbed Regan Delberg, holding his brother's head on his knees. "Polly! Why?" No one said anything. No one. Even those who knew why. Regan turned his contorted face, wet with tears, toward them. "What will I tell our mother?" he wailed. "What am I going to tell her?" No one said anything. Not far away, surrounded by soldiers in the black and gold of Cadwyn, lay Wenk. He was breathing with difficulty, and every breath forced bubbles of blood to his lips. Triss knelt next to him, and a knight in shining armor stood over them both. "Well," asked the knight, "Lady Enchantress, will he live?" "I've done everything I can." Triss got to her feet, pinched her lips. "But—" "What?" "They used this." She shoved him an arrow with a strange head to it and stuck it against a barrel standing by them. The tip of the arrow fell apart, split into 4 barbed, hook-like needles. The knight cursed. "Fredegarde," Wenk uttered with difficulty. "Fredegarde, listen. You mustn't speak," Triss said severely, "or move. The spell is barely holding." "Fredegarde," the commissar repeated. A bubble of blood burst on his lips, and another immediately appeared in its place. "We were wrong. Everyone was wrong. It's not Yarpen. We suspected him wrongly. I vouch for him. Yarpen did not betray. Did not bet—" "Silence!" shouted the knight. "Silence, Wilfrid. Hey, quick now. Bring the stretcher. Stretcher!" "No need," the magician said hollowly, gazing at Wenk's lips where no more bubbles appeared. Ciri turned away and pressed her face to Geralt's side. Fredegarde threw himself up. Yarpen Zigrin did not look at him. He was looking at the dead, at Regan Dahlberg, still kneeling over his brother. "It was necessary, Zigrin," said the knight. "This is war. There was an order. We had to be sure." Yarpen did not say anything. The knight lowered his eyes. "Forgive us," he whispered. The dwarf slowly turned his head and looked at him, at Geralt, at Ciri, at them all. The humans. "What have you done to us?" he asked bitterly. "What have you done to us? What have you made of us?" No one answered him. The eyes of the long-legged elf were glassy and dull. Her contorted lips were frozen in a soundless cry. Geralt put his arms around Ciri. Slowly he unpinned the white rose, splattered with dark stains from her jerkin, and, without a word, threw it on the squirrel's body. "Farewell," whispered Ciri. "Farewell, Rose of Sherwood. Farewell, and forgive us," asked the Witcher. Sorry, Sagral's, excuse me, I'm so sorry. Hello? Okay, hello? My. Ah, well, shit. Hello? Yeah, no, I had a slight issue. My headphone just went poof. I really hope I wasn't just sitting here for a while not saying anything. But, yeah, so Sagral's waking up so he can take over. Welcome back, sweetie.
Hi, hon.
Yeah, you left yourself a chat, so I had disconnected you.
I'm sorry about that.
Don't apologize, you're good.
Okay. So,
By
I
the way, you
hmm,
remember the one movie that had of the, was it talking about with the Scoia'tael and all that stuff? Like, I'm seeing aspects of
Nightmare of the Wolf.
I think I don't remember, but I'm seeing aspects of the third game and
Mm-hmm.
part of the series, like the live action series, in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Please tell me these books are not written backwards.
They're not. The problem, and I'll tell you this straight up,
Just timey-wimey bullshit.
it's a combination of there's a lot of things that happen, and sometimes the same ground is tread because of the fact of it's written as if they're all different cells, especially if you talk about the Scoia'tael.
Yeah, 'cause they've just run into them.
Mmm.
And they've already been to, um, what is it? Sherwood
Mmm.
in chapter 4.
Mm-hmm.
Which, in all honesty, we're almost like halfway through the book.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, I'm ready when you are, love.
I just want to see how many chapters there are real quick. So I am curious. These
Mm.
chapters are pretty long, though.
Mm-hmm.
7. There's 7 chapters in this damn book.
Yeah, Andrew Sobkowski, he writes in massive chapters.
Okay. Well, I was trying to be like, alright, maybe I should start reading 2 chapters at a time. Gotta figure out how this is going. Okay. But yeah. Are you ready?